Well, we ended up having to record a day later than normal this week, and we heard from our loyal listeners, Mitch, we have thrown schedules into complete chaos here. People don't know what to do with themselves.
Yeah, it's like the butterfly effect. One small change affects many others. So, we'll try and make amends for that and give a good show tonight.
We're late, and I was just going to say the only thing we could do now, Mitch, is create and record the greatest episode of View from the West of all time. Let's get into it.
Talking Illinois high school football.
If your goals are as high as you talk about, tonight's the night you go out and just take one more step.
It's a view from the West.
And it starts right now!
Welcome into View from the West podcast. For those who've been waiting an extra day, an extra special welcome. We're sorry that you threw your Tuesday into a complete tangent. Mitch, the people need to hear us talk about high school football.
Apparently, yeah, we certainly heard it from our faithful listeners of where's the show, and they need the show. So yeah, I take the blame on this. That's my fault. Try and do better. Normally we're pretty good about it, but
Yeah.
we missed this week. But yeah, we'll make up for it on this episode for sure.
Absolutely. It's going to be a great episode. Both of us last night, as we were trying to figure out if we could record or couldn't record, we're both pretty disappointed because we were excited to get this show up and rolling and recorded. But anyway, we're here now. So let's focus on the present. It is week 4 in the books, looking towards week 5. That's the halfway point of the season. We're starting to figure out more and more some identity of some teams, and we're starting to, get a little bit of a playoff picture. I think we'll talk more about it next week. We really dove into it a week ago. Now, next week, I think we'll kind of revisit some of our thoughts and see where teams sit. But as of right now, Mitch, there were some big matchups in week 4. There's some more matchups in week 5 that are really going to continue to define how some conference standings shake out.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about the instant reacts, but I had said on there I was trying my best not to look forward to week 5. But boy, is it hard. There is a marquee game in every conference we cover. I said on that episode that I think that these will be games that determine those respective divisions. And boy, these are really, really good matchups that we're about to not only review from week 4, but preview for these upcoming games in week 5.
One of those matchups we're going to preview, I'm very excited about. I'm going to be at it. We'll get into that in a little bit. I think most weeks we kind of debate where I'm going to go. This week I already put my name on one. I already volunteered to go somewhere, so we'll get into that in a minute. But Mitch, you referenced the instant reacts. I encourage anyone to go back. If you didn't hear that episode yet, go back, listen to our instant reacts podcast from week 4. It was a full boat show. It was Brian Stocking, Matt Randazzo, Corey Kuffler stopped by. You also had Jim Taylor, Ty Taylor from WRMJ Radio. It's great. It's always great having them on. And Mitch, you were able to catch a little bit of Sportsline from Saturday morning.
Yep.
Jim and Ty both very complimentary of View from the West, of what we do here. So just really appreciate hearing the kind words, because I have a ton of respect for what they do as well.
Yeah, it's been fun as we've kind of grown this over the past 5 years. We have increasingly gotten in touch with, closer with, collaborative with these different outlets. And certainly Jim and Ty with WRMJ, just a longtime staple in the area. I remember that from when I was playing. And so to kind of, not so much work hand in hand with them, but we do our picks together for track games, and to have them um, on instant reacts, or just me texting Ty on Friday nights, certain things. It's been a lot of fun. So, as you mentioned, to have their kind words meant a heck of a lot to me. I'm admitting it. I rewound that first kind of couple minutes of Sportsline just, to listen to it, because it just puts it all into perspective, that why we do this show, what it means to people who listen to it, to players, to parents, to fans, and to kind of have that mutual respect with people that we respect a lot in the industry means a lot going forward.
So, funny story. I had Sportsline on in the car as we're driving around. I was driving around with my 2 daughters, And that part came on, as I'm just listening along, all of a sudden one of my girls from the back seat says, "Dad, they're talking about you. They're talking about you." And I was like, I know they are. It's awesome.
Right.
So yeah, very cool. Really cool stuff. So great, like we referenced, great week in week 4. Mitch, we just got the highlights up from Quincy's win over Moline.
Yeah.
A historic night, which we'll get into in a minute. But I want to make sure to plug our YouTube channel. Obviously, we're on X and we're now on Instagram. I encourage anyone to go out there, check them out. We got game highlights that I've been covering throughout the season getting posted. And we also, of course, have video clips from the show, our Player of the Year award videos as they come out each week. We got one of those. We got one of those helmets to send out this week. We'll get into that in a minute here.
Well, yeah, before we jump further, just kudos to you for putting those highlight packages together. I mean, the Quincy one is 9 minutes long. I mean, that's a ton of footage to edit into 9 minutes. And it just gives, that little bit extra. Obviously, you've been doing this for years and years and years. As long as I've known you, that's how we met. So it's great. It's great camera work. You were mentioning how much you like, the colors and the lights and things like that.
Yeah.
Just this video aspect of our show that has grown at your hands has been a lot of fun to see. So yeah, if you haven't seen those highlights, check them out because they're awesome.
Well, thank you. Yeah, you can find those on YouTube, and of course, you can find clips on Instagram and on our X account. But yeah, Mitch, you were talking about. I went to Prophetstown a few weeks ago for Newman versus Erie Prophetstown, and man, I don't know if it was the lighting or the combination of the lighting and the uniform colors, but man, the whites and the blues of Newman contrasted with the black and red of Erie Prophetstown, it just popped. Those colors looked amazing when I was editing. I was just blown away.
That's a great field. So yeah, I could see that.
Yep. And we got to mention, speaking of games and being out at games, Mitch, our t-shirts and our hoodies, the View from the West merch is now in the stands. It's on the sidelines. It's out there now.
Yeah.
I saw Philip Johnson, one of our longtime listeners from Kewanee, had his trophy shirt. The shirt says the trophy belongs in Kewanee. We'll get into it. It didn't quite work out that way for the Boilermakers, but either way, he was proudly displaying his View from the West shirt. You also have Jeremy Castle. He tweets at us all the time, and he had his shirt. He had just gotten the mail. He was excited about it. So really appreciate those who, went out and purchased some merch. I even talked to Jason Foy, IHSA official, saw him at the Rockridge game this past week. He got his shirt in the mail. He talks about how he listens every week. So just a ton of fun to hear from the listeners and know that they got their merch and they're excited about it. So Mitch, if we're talking about View from the West merch, you know who we got to thank.
Yep. Tonight's episode, as always, is brought to you by our friends at Breedlove Sporting Goods, Western Illinois' premier sporting goods store for uniforms, apparel, equipment, awards, and online team stores. They provide all the same sporting goods services as the big nationwide companies, but with a faster turnaround, and their uniform pricing is a fraction of the cost you're probably used to. They offer name brands such as Adidas, Under Armour, and Nike, and are extremely responsive with any inquiries. With a primary focus on the western side of the state of Illinois, Breedlove Sporting Goods is the fastest way to outfit your team. Check them out on Facebook or at breedlovesports.com, or shoot Cal Breedlove an email at calbreedlove@gmail.com for more information.
All right, Mitch, we're going to get into week 4, but we got to start with our viewpoints. And in our pod notes here, Mitch wants to talk about the state of the NUIC. So if your viewpoints are ready to go here, Mitch, let's hear about the state of the NUIC.
Okay. This is my hot take of the week. Okay.
All right, here we go.
Saw some comments, both on our feed and on Kyle's NUIC football Facebook page over the weekend. And I don't want to say that these people are incorrect. Those who made this particular comment are incorrect, but I want to frame it differently. Okay. I saw some comments that were similar in nature about, and look, hand up, this will sound like me defending Morrison, as I typically do. But again, let me get through it and then let's reframe the conversation. The comments were, and I've seen them for a couple weeks now, was that Morrison's in over their head. This is a disappointing season. Hasn't gone the way that they've planned in the NUIC so far. Again, for people to make those comments, that's fine. It's fair. No problem. But my thing is, we don't think about that with Fulton. We don't think about that with Forreston, and for good reason. There's nothing I'm not putting against Fulton and Forreston. It helps prove my point that we should be talking about the strength of this conference from top to bottom. And I know we do that, but there's been years that it's 6 of the 9, right?
Yep.
And you've had teams such as Galena and Stockton and EPC maybe coming from the bottom or staying at the bottom of the standings. That's flipped. That is completely flipped this year. Those 3 programs have been through years of losing football at the hands of teams in their conference. They've caught up. They've caught up quick. And so let's not think of it as teams having bad seasons. And not to mention that Morrison had lost a lot of starters. Fulton's lost starters. Forreston's lost starters. Let's think of it as this is the best conference in the state, bar none, regardless of class. This is the best conference. So there's going to be teams that are going to be at the bottom of that. But if a Morrison or a Fulton or a Forreston finish at 3 and 6, I'll take them over a quarter of the 1A playoff teams every time. So again, I don't think there's any question that people talk about the strength of the NUIC, but let's not think of it in terms of these teams are bad. It's just that the conference is so hard. It's a credit to what Lena's done for so long. It's a credit to what Dupec has done for so long. And again, it's a credit to the Stocktons and the EPCs and the Galenas who have really, really made strides this year and have made this conference from top to bottom a very, very talented group.
Yep, I think, yes, I will agree. We've talked about it, and I think that this year in particular, like you said, top to bottom, I think the parity it's as tight of a conference as we've seen in the NUIC in a long time. And not only is it parity, but it's really good, talented teams that are all equal, right? And I think that Morrison is still a good football team. And they're the one, like you said, somebody has to be at the bottom of those standings. And right now, it's Morrison. And it just so happens that it's their first year in the Northwest Upstate Illini. I think long term, I think they're a great fit. I think they're going to get their wins.
They went to Galesburg and won.
Yeah.
They lose to Galena, and then they go on the road and beat Galesburg. So that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
They might lose a conference game, but then they go on the road and beat a Western Big 6 team.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
That's just, again, it sounds like I'm defending Morrison because I know I do that. But my point being is that we're not having that conversation with Fulton and Forreston because and you shouldn't. You should not have that conversation that way. Just frame it differently. Frame it as the strength of how good this conference is this year.
There you go. Amen. I'm with you. From my viewpoint, I'm having a similar take, but on the opposite end of the spectrum. I'm talking Western Big 6, and I think there's a lot of parity in the Western Big 6. Obviously, Quincy is the top of the tops. We're going to talk about them in a minute here when we get into games from last week. They've proven that. I think Moline is right there, just a notch below them. Quincy proved that this past week when they defeated them the way they did. That being said, I think that the rest of the pack, I think when you're talking about the teams like Sterling, United Township, Rock Island, Geneseo, I think all of them, maybe with the exception of Galesburg, I think all those teams, they're toss-up games, right? They're going to be really close games down the way. And I think it's going to be hard to predict some of these games down the rest of the Western Big 6 when those teams start meeting up. It's just a lot. I do think there's a lot of parity here. And we kind of thought that in the beginning of the season, but it certainly played out that way. For Moline, I think there's a chance that Moline can win out. I think there's a shot that they can win out. I don't think it's a foregone conclusion. I don't think it's a given. I think a lot of those teams I just referenced if they play really good football, I think they could get Moline. But I'm just interested to see how it all plays out down the rest of the way. Because like you said in the NUIC, I think there's some good parity in the Western Big 6 as well. I hope that we're in store for a lot of exciting football.
I think you're right. And it's I I think you're right in a couple ways. That one, now that Quincy has disposed of Moline, and that sounds worse than I mean it, but Moline's off their schedule now.
Yeah, yeah.
They're probably their toughest test remaining. I think that's clear cut. I think Moline's the same way. Quincy's off their plate now. Now they can look forward to their next 5 games. I think they do have a good shot, like you just mentioned. But then you look at UT coming off of a big win against Geneseo, which we'll talk about,
Yep.
and they've looked great all year. Sterling has looked good all year. So it will be a battle, I think. 1 and 2 may be set. Again, I think 1 is set. And we'll see. Crazy things have happened in the last 3 weeks of the Western Big Six that we've always seen year after year after year when some of these teams start playing each other. But yeah, there is a lot of talent in this Western Big Six conference that any game, any matchup could sometimes fall either way. So yeah, I absolutely agree with what you're saying here in this conference too.
Mitch, and speaking of the Western Big Six, I've caught a little different glance of the Western Big Six in the past week. I've seen my son's 8th grade football team go on the road to Geneseo and on the road to Sterling and come away with 2 victories. So
Oof.
yeah, I was happy with that. Going into big Western Big Six country and coming away with 2 wins. My son had
Yeah.
had an extra point, and he had a couple tackles on defense. So he had
All right.
had a pass deflection, broke up a passing play in the Sterling game. So yeah.
Look,
So
we don't talk about Iowa football, but maybe we need to start following this team. Sounds like they're
Well,
doing well.
and we don't talk about 8th grade football either. So
Opportunity there.
There we
That's
go. There we go.
low hanging fruit.
All right, well, let's get into the high school level Western Big Six schools here. Mitch, I saw history at Browning Field for the Quincy Blue Devils last Friday night. Historic
Mhm.
night for the Blue Devils. They win the Western Big Six showdown over Moline, 43-21. Another impressive game for the Blue Devils here. They wasted no time in this one. Second play of the game, Braden Little throws a 68-yard touchdown pass to Tykel Hammers. About 5 minutes later, 29-yard pass to Rico Clay, and just like that, it's 15-0. Moline did respond with a pair of touchdowns in the second quarter. Elijah Taylor to Nolan Ducey for 36 yards. Later, it was Mark Carey with a nice 24-yard run. So at one point near the end of the first half, it's 29-14. Like I said, Moline and Carey had just scored. Their crowd was into it. Browning Field was kind of hyped. It felt like it might become a game in the second half if Moline can hold them. So here we go. About 40-ish seconds left when the Blue Devils take over the ball. And man, what really impressed me, obviously a lot to be impressed with for this Quincy squad, but the way they methodically marched downfield, led by Braden Little and those athletic wide receivers, well-executed drive. They use the sideline to perfection to stop the clock. They get a pass, and a wide receiver steps out of bounds with 1 second left. So they move down to the 29-yard line. And what's funny is I hear people behind me like almost questioning, like, why aren't they trying a long field goal? Like, what, there's 1 second left. Just try to boot one and see what you can get, whatever, But I should say Moline fans, right? I was on the Moline sideline, the home sideline, and you hear people kind of questioning it. Well, then Quincy goes out and proves why they didn't worry about the field goal, because they have a quarterback like Braden Little and they have athletes at wide receiver position. This ball went to Rico Clay, who goes up and gets it, a leaping catch, hauls it in as he's in the air. What an effort from the Quincy Blue Devils. That drive really impressed me, but just overall in this night, it was just a great show from Quincy, and you can really see they're one of the top tier teams, obviously in this conference, but around the state of Illinois.
Yeah, no question. We talked kind of going into this game that this was a matchup that we had circled in the preseason, and certainly as the first couple of weeks went on, it just, the momentum or the hype just kind of grew and grew. And it lived up to it in the sense that Quincy proved to be who we thought that they were.
Yep.
I had kind of made the comment that if it was a close game, Moline's been in that situation a little more. Maybe I would give the upper hand to them in that situation. What I wasn't really factoring in is how do you even get Quincy into that situation? Like you just described it. You get them in that sort of uh I don't know what you want to in that sort of situation late in this first half, but 44 seconds is a lot of time for this offense.
Yeah. Yep.
And like you said, the way that they methodically did it and utilized the sidelines, and they've got all these playmakers that can do it, and you've got the quarterback who knows where to put the ball. I just don't I don't know how you get them, with their backs against the wall. So for you to be there to see it in person, you just described Rico's touchdown catch there at the end of the half. You have a great highlight of that right in your lap as you texted me
Yeah.
on Friday night. Yeah, it's cool, man. This is a really exciting team for Quincy. I think this Friday will be the 2-year anniversary that they've been undefeated in regular season play. So it's really impressive stuff that we've seen from Quincy the past couple seasons.
Yeah, absolutely. So I hadn't seen Quincy, live and in person. I think the last time I saw him again, I think it was at Moline, and it was Jarrell Brock when he was a
Mhm.
junior or senior. Really impressive athlete in his own right. Ended up going to Division I, Iowa State. So,
Yep.
I was really happy that I could get back and see this Quincy squad. It's hard being in the Quad Cities to get down to get down all the way down to Quincy. And I know the team and the players and the fans of Quincy, they make those trips all the time. But anyway, it's tough for me here covering, stuff for the local Quad Cities area, but I was really glad that I was able to get this one. So when and I got to meet Don O'Brien, got to walk the sidelines with Don O'Brien.
Yeah, you're burying the lead there. Yeah.
This is great. Great to meet a Twitter friend in person as he put it out
Yep.
there on social media on Friday night. Really good guy. So really nice to meet him and really cool to walk the sidelines with him for a few minutes. So when it's all said and done, Mitch, it's a school record for passing yards in a game for Braden Little. He's 20 of 29, 437 yards, 6 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. He's done a lot and had a lot of numbers that make us stop and look twice at a stat sheet. But this performance, I think, is truly eye-popping considering the stakes of this game, and it's on the road against a really strong Moline team.
Yeah, I mean, I think he finished the first half with 332 yards and 5, and even that is an
Yeah.
incredible game. And it was the first half of a rivalry game on the road. So, yeah, it's truly remarkable what he's doing. Again, he's got a shot to be in the top 10, in the top 5 of a lot of passing uh, uh, s- categories for career and I should say history. So just to continue to see him kind of put up these numbers, you hope that it continues so that his name is etched into those record books as they should be.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so we've joked about it on the pod, especially last week, when every week we see Braden Little's numbers and we say, one of these weeks we got to get a helmet to Quincy. We got to get Braden Little a helmet. Mitch, is this the week we finally send a Breedlove's Player of the Week helmet to Braden Little?
Drum roll, please. It is.
Yeah.
This is the week. What we've been given. This is our 13th one we've given away. There's probably 12 performances from Braden Little that are worthy of a helmet. So
Yep.
to finally get him one is well deserved. Yeah, it's what a fantastic game for Braden Little, as you mentioned. 2029, 437 yards, 6 touchdowns in a big win for Quincy. Yeah, we had some performances this week that we'll get into. Even in this game, you had other players that were worthy of getting a helmet. But congratulations to Braden Little in the Quincy Blue Devils. But that helmet's going to Quincy.
Yes, congratulations, Braden Little, our Breedlove's Player of the Week for Week 4. We talked about it last week. Maybe we gave a little added motivation, and he certainly answered the call here with those kind of numbers.
I don't think he needs us, but and certainly we don't want this to stop the good play either. I hope this was not the end to the means. So, but no, all joking aside, this is a such a fun player to cover for the past couple of years. So to get a mini helmet his way, well deserved more than once, but we'll finally get him one.
Absolutely. All right, well, let's talk about some of the wide receivers he was throwing to. Tykel Hammers, 5 catches, 149 yards, and a touchdown. Rico Clay, 7 catches for 89 yards, 3 touchdowns. Jarius Rice, 91 yards and a touchdown. And Caden Johansson, man, he showed off some speed. I don't know if you saw that highlight, but he cut through the defenders and really looked good on a touchdown run in the second half. 96 yards and a touchdown. Overall, just a great effort from, like we said, Braden Little, but the wide receivers and the running backs able to come up with those passes and make some plays using their feet, using their legs to avoid defenders as well. On the defensive side of the ball, once again, a really solid Blue Devil defense here. They had a few 4th down stops when I was there. They had an interception in the red zone. So they continue to step up and get the job done. It's a win for Quincy, and it's win number 100 for head coach Rick Little at Quincy. What a milestone for him and for the job he's done. Great work.
Yeah, certainly it's great that we cover so many good coaches, and certainly you can't have that conversation without talking about Coach Little. So 100 wins, what a great milestone. Our guy Matt Shuckman at Muddy River Sports had a great article about that. So here's to the first 100, and here's to the next 100 for Coach Little.
Yeah, yep, that's a great way to put it. You're exactly right. So Mitch, all of this was great. Great night for the Quincy Blue Devils at Browning Field. But maybe the highlight of the night for me, did you hear Cameron Floxhill?
Literally a highlight.
Yeah.
Literally one. You got it on camera.
Yeah. Did you hear him in the sidelines on the huddle? Let's go to the audio. Let's roll the clip.
I love your podcast. I love him. You from the West is the best.
So there you go, Mitch. Cameron giving us the shout out. View from the West is the best.
Yeah, I hope that wasn't at a pivotal point in that game where you took his attention away. But I think they're a strong enough team to overcome that sort of distraction. But yeah, that was great. Love the shout out.
Well, so the best part of the story is Quincy's defensive coordinator, Eric Gower, responded and said, "We always appreciate the coverage from you guys. It's also great to finally have proof that Cam doesn't listen to most things I say." So I told him, sorry, coach, he was busy promoting a podcast, but he jumped back in the huddle after that. So awesome. So
That's great.
Shout out to Cameron. Thank you. That was the highlight of the week for me. Maybe the highlight of the season. That was really cool. Just a really cool moment that I did not expect as I'm, getting my camera in there in the huddle. So anyway, So Quincy gets the win. They are at the top of the Western Big Six standings. They're tied with the Sterling Golden Warriors. We'll talk about them in a minute. But let's keep going down the way here. United Township gets the win over Geneseo 34-16. This is United Township's first win over Geneseo since 2021. So a great win here for the Panthers. And Mitch, they had to battle from behind in this one to rally to get the win.
Yeah, trailed 9-0 after the first quarter, and they trailed again 16-7 in the second quarter. But boy, the Panthers rallied 27 unanswered to get this win over Geneseo, which in our 5 years we've covered 2 or 3 UT wins over Geneseo now, at least 2.
Yeah, probably
going back to that first season when they played in the spring. But again, that's just kind of a testament to how Coach Welch has these guys just progressing week after week and year after year. But in this one here, again, 27 unanswered to get the win. We've talked about Isaiah Navarrete a lot this season. Once again, 140 yards, 2 touchdowns on 14 carries. I've been super impressed with quarterback Christian Peterson, 7 of 11 for 137 yards and 2 more scores. Those scores went to Cohen Parsons and Josiah Massey. So again, we talked about how good Quincy's defense was in Moline, but this performance all season, I mean, UT has been this might have been their biggest differential because they've been playing such close games the first 3 weeks, but that defense has looked good, especially here again, 27 unanswered, second half shutout, especially to kind of secure this win for UT. So a great win in the Soul Bowl on Friday night.
Yeah, in hearing comments from Nick Welch, really impressed. He was really impressed with his team, being down in this one, like you said, early. And it's kind of gut check time, right? When they've been in close games and they haven't come away with wins. And to be trailing this one to a good Geneseo team early on, this team didn't fold. They fought back,
Yep.
They continued to fight, and they come away with a big win, much needed win to build a little momentum here. And hey, it's a great birthday present for head coach Nick Welch. Happy birthday, coach.
Yep, that's today, Tuesday. So yeah, happy birthday to Coach, an early present there on Friday. And I'm sure he is spending it preparing for Quincy here coming up in a couple of days.
Yes. A lot of game film, trying to figure out, is there a master plan? Is there a way to beat Quincy? We'll find out down the way. UT now sitting at 2-2. So we talked about the other team tied with Quincy here at the top of the Big Six standings. That's the Sterling Golden Warriors. They get the win 40-3 over Galesburg. It was Drew Nettleton, 8 of 14 passing, 151 yards, a new school record with 5 touchdowns. So he threw 2 to Caden Phillips, a great athlete there making plays for Sterling, along with Will Ports, Jimmy Wadsworth, Quincy Moss. Nettleton set the previous record a year ago. So Nettleton getting the job done, leading that offense. But man, they got some weapons that he's throwing to, and they're starting to put things together here in the last couple weeks.
Yeah, I remember that night last year. I believe it was the Quincy game. He threw 4 touchdowns. So yeah, cool to see him re-break the record here. But we talk a lot about Caden Phillips, and certainly we'll talk about him in just a second here. But Jimmy Wadsworth has really had an impressive season. We've talked about Quincy Moss a lot, and Will Ports as well. So man, this Sterling offense starting to click.
Yeah, I think so too. Offensively and defensively, great effort. Only allowed 6 first downs. That's per Drake Landsman of Friday Night Drive. So overall, a solid effort here, both sides of the ball. And Mitch, this Sterling squad, a name we referenced earlier, getting some big time praise from that NFL team in Chicago.
Yeah, if you want to call them an NFL team.
I was
so
trying
last Thursday.
I was trying.
You're wearing the shirt. You're wearing the shirt. I had to. I don't have any leg to stand on. The Bengals are awful.
Yeah.
So last Thursday, the night before the game, Sterling's Caden Phillips was selected as the Chicago Bears high school All-Stars winner. I believe it's like a Chicago Bears Foundation award they give out. He was the winner for week 3 after his big performance in that win over United Township. If you remember, he had 2 punt return touchdowns and a rushing touchdown in that win. He got presented with a cool personalized football with the Bears logo on it, and Chicago All-Star thing. So yeah, really cool to get that sort of recognition.
Yeah, great for him. Great for that Sterling program to get that recognition. They get the win there. Like I said, they're sitting at 2-2, tied with Quincy on top of the Western Big Six now after going 0-2 in the non-conference. So building some momentum there in Sterling as well. And the last game to talk about in the Western Big Six, Rock Island falls to Bradley Bourbonnais 49-14. Javian Clark-Pugh, 12 of 23, 121 yards, including a 35-yard pass to Elijah Venegas. Overall, the offense just couldn't maintain drives, and overall 3 of 16 on third down. So just not efficient on third downs, just unable to keep things moving in the right direction against a really good Bradley Bourbonnais team. We talked a lot about Rock Island's schedule. It's been really tough, and they're, unfortunately, they're lopsided scores they're coming away with here.
Yeah, the Bradley Bourbonnais Boilermakers. That's a lot to say.
I didn't know. I didn't think I knew that nickname until this week.
But boy, they're undefeated. They're 4-0. They're a very talented team. So yeah, it goes to what you just said, is this non-conference schedule for Rock Island has not gone their way. But boy, are they playing some tough opponents. So these next 5 weeks or so, for Rock Island getting back into Western Big Six play. Big rivalry game this week with Moline at home. See if they can get something going, and get just get some momentum here to finish out the season. They did this last year, and they finished strong. So let's see if Rock Island can do it again.
Yeah, let's look into the matchups in week 5. United Township goes on the road to Quincy. You got Galesburg going on the road to Geneseo. Moline is at Rock Island in that rivalry game, and Sterling goes on the road to Beloit Turner in Wisconsin. So, Mitch, I'll start with you. What matchup here stands out?
Well, we don't know anything about Beloit Turner. I think it's United at Quincy, and I don't know. I don't think United has the firepower to match up with Quincy.
United Township.
Did it again. I've just been so impressed with the Panthers this year. So even if they don't come away with a win in this game, if they play well, I think that still bodes well for the rest of their year, right? And just looking at what they kind of have left after Quincy, they get Rock Island. They've still got Galesburg. They've got a Regis, Wisconsin team, which apparently is undefeated, but I don't know anything about that. And then throw in a Moline game there in the middle. So if they can go into this game at Quincy and play well, maybe they can pull off the upset. I don't predict these things all that great. But if they can play well regardless, I think that will really set them up for their remaining 4 games after this week.
Yeah, it's a tough matchup on the road. Obviously, anywhere you play Quincy is going to be a tough matchup. Going down there is going to make it tough. But yeah, I think for United Township, like, you just continue, to try to each week with a young squad. With, like you said, you've been impressed with Peterson. I've liked Navarrete going back to last year. I think that if you just continue to build some consistency and just build some confidence with players as they get more experience. That was what Coach Welch talked about at the beginning of the season, right? Just gaining that varsity experience. And then eventually, if the confidence comes, maybe the wins come along with it. It's a tough matchup, but you never know. You never know what's going to happen week in and week out. The game I'm looking at is Moline at Rock Island. Obviously, Rock Island is desperate for a win right now. They're at home in a huge rivalry game against the Moline team that's coming off a loss. So Moline's going to be super motivated, right? They're ready to jump back in there and really take it to somebody. But for Rock Island, this is a rivalry game. I think you go in, if you're head coach Fritz Diadone, you get in that locker room and nothing else matters, right? Nothing else that's happened before this, and really nothing else that happens from here on out. We have a chance to play Moline, to play our rival at home. And if you can come away with a victory here, you just get that spark, right? You never know what's going to happen the rest of the way. I think, like we talked about at the beginning of the show, I think there are a lot of, maybe toss-up type games. I think there's games that Moline will be favored, and there's games where Rock Island may be the underdog. But I think there's opportunities here. I think Rock Island can grab a win somewhere along the way. I don't know which game it's going to be. Can they do it against their rival? I was impressed with Moline even in a loss. I think they're a really good football team. I was glad I saw them in person, and I know they're well coached with Coach Morrissey. They'll be ready to go in this one. That's a matchup I want to see how it plays out.
It looks like Beloit Turner is 2-3. They're coming off of 2 losses. So for Sterling, it's an opportunity to get better, obviously. To tune up some things coming off of a big win. If that offense can kind of keep the momentum, defense as well. Then you get Geneseo, and then you get Quincy in week 7. So I can't imagine Sterling is looking too far ahead at the moment, trying to stay, in the present. But I think they've got 2 favorable games here going into that week 7 game against Quincy. And then, the last game we haven't talked about is Galesburg and Geneseo, 2 programs not off to maybe the start that they were hoping for. Geneseo gets this game at home. I expect Geneseo to win this one and get back on the winning streak. But again, we've seen Galesburg put together a really, really good rushing attack. And again, it's why you put 2 teams on the field and see who comes out. So they certainly have a chance in this game, the way that Geneseo hasn't looked great the past couple of weeks. So, another week in the Western Big Six and another week of intrigue across the board.
It is interesting when you look at Geneseo and Sterling. Both teams sitting at 2-2, but Sterling has 2 Western Big Six wins, 2 wins in a row. Geneseo on the opposite end has 2 losses in a row, 2 losses in the Western Big Six. So kind of coming into this in opposite directions. One more note about Beloit Turner. I know that, like you said, they're 2 and 3. I think they're a little bit smaller than Sterling. So they're one of the smaller teams, that maybe the smallest team that Sterling will play all season long. And you never know what that means exactly, but it is something worth noting.
Yeah. Just looking back there, or floating back to Geneseo real quick and looking at their schedule. I think this is a must win for them if they're going to get into the playoffs. They have to win this game.
Yeah.
Because that would be them sitting at 3-2 with games against Sterling, which I don't know that I would favor them. Would favor Geneseo in, and then they play Thornridge, which I would favor Geneseo in, and then they finish with Quincy and Rock Island. So I think to avoid a sort of must-win situation, I think that's where they are right now. Get this 3rd win, and I think they can get to 5.
Yep, I would absolutely agree with that.
This episode of View from the West podcast is brought to you by Simulation Sports. In addition to golf simulators and batting cages, Simulation Sports provides golf club repair, custom fittings for driver shafts, and even private lessons for golf, baseball, and softball. Whether you're looking for a fun group activity or want to fine-tune your skills and equipment, Simulation Sports has something for everyone. Visit their facility at 400 South Main Street in Monmouth, Illinois, or go to thesimulationsports.com to start playing today.
Shouldn't financial advice focus on you? I can help you plan for your financial future, from protection to saving to retirement. I'm Nate Neighbor, your Modern Woodmen representative. Call me at 309-233-2656 or find me on the Modern Woodmen website.
Get to know your local Modern Woodmen representative to plan for your financial future and learn about valuable member benefits. Modern Woodmen of America. Touching lives, securing futures. Securities offered through MWA Financial Services, Inc., a wholly owned subsidiary of Modern Woodmen of America.
View from the West podcast is also sponsored by the Cupcake Cartel. Gourmet cupcakes that are made to order. Over 40 flavors, including wedding cake, lemon blueberry, strawberry milkshake, snickerdoodle, and Oreo. Perfect for weddings, birthdays, showers, fundraisers, or any event. You can find the Cupcake Cartel on Facebook. We thank them for their support.
All right, should we get into the Three Rivers Athletic Conference, Mitch?
We shall.
All right, let's start in the Rock division. Mitch, you're not buying any of this big school, small school division stuff that Brian Stocking threw out on the Instant Reacts, huh?
One, that's the first I've ever heard of it. Two, the IHSA doesn't recognize it that way.
Yeah.
I understand that that's
the
premise.
The IHSA also doesn't recognize properly the Lincoln Land Conference either.
That's true.
Yeah.
But no, I'm not. No, not at all. And as I said on Instant Reacts, it's been through so many name changes in the last however many years. I'm not going to do it again. Rock in Mississippi is fine.
Yep. Yeah, it's fine. Exactly.
Better than small and large.
Yeah, here we go. All right, here we go. All right, so the Three Rivers Athletic Conference Rock Division, Sterling Newman gets the win, 54-21 over Orion. Evan Bushman throws 4 touchdown passes in a balanced attack, a balanced offense here for Sterling Newman. It was John Rousey with a 69-yard touchdown reception, Matthew Blackert with a touchdown reception, along with Brady Williamson. He had a ridiculous touchdown run. I saw it in the highlights on WQAD. Down the sideline, stiff arms a defender, keeps his balance along the sideline, then cuts it back into the end zone. You know, as 2 defenders are around him, it was a really impressive run. Briar Ivy also had 116 yards and 2 touchdowns. Mitch, over the years, the last couple years, we've talked obviously a lot about Newman's defense. And we've said that on the flip side, we're waiting for consistency from Newman's offense. Mitch, I think this podcast is officially known as the Newman Offensive Appreciation Pod. How about that?
Hey, I have texted Coach LeMay that for a while now, that we've just been kind of hoping and waiting for it to see it.
And he's been waiting too, right? He's been saying.
I'm sure he has been, but he's had the pieces now, and so another year with some of these players that came back from last year's team. Another year in the system. They're obviously mixing some things up. which doesn't sound like a typical Newman team, right? You don't think of spread offense when you think of Newman, but boy, it's working. So this is the third straight game they've scored over 40 points. I think when on the instant reacts, I was a little, I don't say critical because Newman doesn't control their schedule, but I do think that these last 3 weeks have been against the weaker part of their schedule, right? Mendota, obviously EP was a nice win, and Orion. But now they've got, and we'll talk about this game coming up, Rock Ridge, Murco the week after that, and then they finish with Kewanee and Monmouth Roseville. So not to take it away from the comments, because I don't want to make it sound like I'm doing that, because I have been super impressed with what they're doing, and I think they will continue to keep doing that. It's just that, call it what it is, it's maybe against the easier part of their schedule. But the way that they're playing, the way that they can move the ball around, we talked about 2 weeks ago how they had 12 different ball carriers, and now you've got Bushman throwing 4 touchdown passes. So they can hit you a number of different ways, and it's really hard to score on them. So I do expect them to continue to do this. I don't want to sound too critical because I know it's going to come off that way, but I'm not. I've been really, really impressed with Newman this year.
No, I'm rolling with the Blue Machine here. I've been really impressed, and we start looking at the fact that they're going to be a 1A playoff team. I just really like what they're doing right now, and their offense is very well balanced, and it seems like they have a lot of depth, right? They have a lot of guys that can make plays and get things done. I just think that for as well as they ran the ball against Erie Prophetstown, then they go into this Orion game and they start passing the ball around. It's just, that's a really good sign for, moving forward.
Yeah. I meant to bring this up in my hot take viewpoint. So I'm going to sidestep here for just a second, because you mentioned it right there, BS, Newman being a 1A playoff team. The North this year is going to suck to watch, because you're going to have great matchups every single round.
Well, it's gonna suck in the best way possible, right? Because you're gonna have amazing games.
I mean, maybe, but you're gonna lose half the teams.
I know. That's what I mean.
If this was a 1 through 32, when it comes to the playoff preview show and we look at the 1A bracket, and Kyle usually does a great job of ranking them 1 through 32.
Yep.
I would put every team that we cover, assuming they don't play another team that we cover in the first round, into at least the second round.
Yeah.
There's no chance that a couple teams in the South are going to be very, very good, but it's just going to be so jam-packed talented in the 1A North again this year.
Yes.
And it's just going to be heartbreaking for a really good team in round 1.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. It's going to be, like you said, it's going to suck, but it's going to be like,
we got plenty of playoff talk in the next 5 weeks. Right. I meant to bring that up at the start. But let's get back into one of those really, really good 1A teams here in Newman.
Yep. Well, it was interesting to hear Chip Filler on Sportsline on WRMJ talk about how they had their defense set up to stop the run. And that was what, obviously, because they saw the film against Erie Prophetstown. So they were geared up to stop what Newman did best the week before. And then again, Newman pivots and they become really effective through the air. So good on them. It's interesting to see how it plays out week in and week out moving forward, especially in a big matchup this week against Rock Ridge. See how it plays out, how they continue, what they do to move the ball, what they do offensively, and how they try to catch teams off guard one way or the other. And on the Orion side of things, another matchup where Orion's in it in the beginning and they're going kind of blow for blow with a talented offense, right? That offense can keep up for usually about a quarter and a half, getting close to halftime. But again, it was kind of one of those, I think they had a drive stall or they had an interception or turnover, and then inevitably Newman scores. Then Newman scores again before the half. Then they get the ball at half and they score on their opening possession. And then all of a sudden it's like the game's kind of snowballed away from Orion. So it's tough because they're low on numbers. And I think their offense can, have enough talent to hang for a little while. and then it's just slowed down. It's sputtered out eventually, and teams are able to really, do some things against their defense. And so,
yeah, like you said, they were in it early. Owen Voorhees had 2 80-plus yard touchdowns. I think one was a kick return, and then one was a rush. I want to say it might have been a reception, but like you said, especially against a team like Newman, who's just going to wear you down and wear you down fast. And this game flipped like that.
Yeah.
I remember seeing the score early and then seeing it like 15 minutes later, and it was out of reach already. So, yeah, they're playing hard. We've talked about the talent that they've got on that roster. They just need some numbers. So, be interested to see this week with Orion playing Riverdale.
Yep.
But we can get into Newman's opponent here next.
Yep. All right, let's talk about it. One of the biggest matchups I think this coming week will be Rockridge going up against Newman. Rockridge got the win last week, 41-0 over Erie Prophetstown. Cullen Schweigen, another productive day for him. He had 3 touchdown passes. Landon Wheatley got 1. Owen Steele. Jacob Fryermuth scored a touchdown. Tanner Dye scored a touchdown. Also, Thomas Sowards had a rushing touchdown. So overall, good effort from the Rockets. Kind of a, workman-like, business-like effort here. They were up 14-0 at the half. Defense really stepped up in the second half to really control and slow down what Erie Prophetstown was doing. Erie Prophetstown was without Dimitri Larson and Connor Keegan, 2 dynamic playmakers for them on offense. So the Panthers are still trying to figure some things out offensively, and this Rockridge defense is just too much. It's just too much for them in this one. Rockridge held EP to 2 first downs in the second half. So really impressive effort here from the Rockets.
Erie Prophetstown certainly had that great start with wins over Kewanee and Spring Valley Hall, and then kind of ran into a couple buzzsaws here with Newman and Rockridge. So really like this matchup against Mercer County in week 5. Obviously don't know the health of Erie Prophetstown, like you mentioned. Obviously, when you don't have Dimitri Larson on the field, it really changes the game plan. So, but still looking at long-term prospects of Erie Prophetstown. After Merco, you've got Riverdale, Orion, and Mendota. So I think they can get to 5. I do, but they got to get healthy.
Yep. One more note on Rockridge. Mitch,
Yep.
I owe an apology to Chase Wheatley. He was the receiver who hauled in a 4th down conversion in the first quarter. I was there to get the highlights. Chase Wheatley hauls it in, but in my rush of editing and writing the script on Friday night, I wrote down Owen Steele's name because Owen Steele, your disappointed face. I can't.
You can feel it.
It's like that, that disappointed parent. You're giving me that look like.
What can I say? You've been doing this for 25 years, Greg. What can I say?
So anyway, Owen Steele ran over and they were like celebrating the play together at the end of my highlight. Well, that's what I looked at. I looked up as I'm editing. I saw, I think Owen Steele's 13. I saw the number 13. I wrote it down. So anyway, the name was incorrect on WQAD. Sorry, Chase Wheatley. I'll get your name correct. He's only a sophomore, so I have time to redeem myself, Mitch.
Yeah, not the only name that was incorrectly said on the score on Friday. Going back to the Moline game, Mark Carey was miscredited. I don't remember what Cuffler said, but it wasn't Mark Carey. But
yeah, and
it happens. It happens.
Now, but that one, you know what? I'm gonna tell the truth.
Was that your highlight too? Oh
yeah,
boy.
And that's also my fault because I did not write it in the script. I assumed.
Oh boy. And you know what?
Now it's like
Stocking should catch that too. We'll put some blame on Stocking.
Well, I was hoping that Cuff would bail me out because he's the Moliner, but in the moment he didn't know. And
now we're just pointing fingers at everybody else.
It's my fault. I'll take responsibility. So sorry, Mark Carey. Sorry, Chase Wheatley. I will do better. All right. One more game in the track rock side. Mercer County gets the 36-7 win over Riverdale. Quarterback John Baldwin, 189 yards, 2 touchdown passes to Dalen Blazer. Good sign for this Mercer County offense and overall a good defensive effort. So here we are. Mercer County now sitting at 3-1 after, a shaky start in week 1. and they were down early to Sherrard,
Mhm.
but hey, they've really turned it on, and here they go, 3-1.
Yeah, I think Mason Gray scored again. So yeah, Mirko's really turned a corner here. Been impressed with them the last 3 weeks. But again, like I was talking about with Newman, might have been the easier part of their schedule. Sherrard, Orion, and Riverdale.
Yeah.
And I think that this game against EP becomes Mirko's must-win game because they finished with Newman, Rockridge, Princeton.
Yeah.
Maybe a week 9 win in Mendota there would be your 5th, but I think this EP game here, week 5, is a must-win for Mirko.
Yep, I would agree with that. Well, let's get into it then. The games on the Rock side in week number 5. Rock Ridge goes on the road.
These are all good.
Yeah.
These are all good.
Rock Ridge goes on the road to Sterling Newman. Erie Prophetstown hosting Mercer County, and Orion is hosting Riverdale. So all great matchups, all really important matchups on this side of the conference. I'll start with Rock Ridge and Newman. That's a game I really want to see. These teams play, they battle each other year in and year out. They play tight games. They're always really competitive teams.
Newman won that one in week 1 last year, right?
Sounds correct. Yep.
I think that was only a 14-7 game.
Yeah, and it was a defensive effort. Yep, I do remember it was a really good, close game that came down to the end, I believe. Yep.
Yeah, of the 4 sides of the ball, quote unquote, between Rockridge offense, Rockridge defense, Newman offense, Newman defense, I don't know who holds the key in this one because you have 2 really dynamic offenses against 2 really good defenses. So I don't know what the key will be in that game. I'm really intrigued on this one. I do think this is one of those games that will determine the Rock. I feel that in my bones. I think this will be a really, really fun matchup. If I will have to predict this game with WRMJ. That's going to take me a minute to think about because I've been so impressed with both of these teams. I think they're so evenly matched. At this point, it's a toss-up for me.
Yep. So let's look at that Mercer County Erie Prophetstown game then next. That's another one that, again, really crucial to the standings and really crucial to potential playoff outlook here.
Yeah. 2 teams at the moment trending in opposite directions. Obviously, Mirko has a lot of momentum. EP coming off with 2 losses. If EP's healthy, I like how they match up in this game. If they're not, though, I think Mirko's just the way that they've been playing on both sides of the ball will be too much for an EP team that might not have Dimitri Larson.
Yeah, we'll talk more about it down the way, but there's a stretch in there where Erie Prophetstown could go on a run. They already have 2 wins. There's a stretch where they could get wins 3, 4, 5. This one though would really help them though.
For both teams, Mercer County and Erie Prophetstown, I think is kind of a must-win. This will get you eventually to 5 type of games, as you just mentioned. EP after this has Riverdale, Orion, and Mendota. I think that's 3 for them, but then they would finish with Princeton, which I would not favor them in that game. So at the moment, I think they do have 5. I'm pretty comfortable with saying that EP will still get 5. If they can beat Mercer County, gets a little bit easier.
And when you look at the Mercer County schedule, this does seem like a must-win for Mercer County. Like he referenced already. Yeah.
Yeah, because if EP wins this and Mirko goes to 3-2, their next 3 games are against Newman, Rockridge, and Princeton. They would have to win one of those games. I think they will win against Mendota in week 9, but they would have to beat Newman, Rockridge, or Princeton. And I don't know that I would favor them in any of those 3.
And now, all this being said, we always count to the magic number of 5. But as we saw last year, and as the Seuss has already alluded to in his Friday Night Drive coverage, 4-win teams will get in, but that's never obviously guaranteed because there's a handful of 4 and 5 teams that are left out every year. Bureau Valley being one of those schools a year ago, those 4 and 5, and they fell short. So
you want to be at 5. You want to be at 5, but
absolutely.
That doesn't take away from this game being. It really kind of sets the stage for the rest of the season for both of these teams, depending on the outcome. Regardless, it sets the stage for what they would need to do.
Yep, completely agree. Last note on the games in week 5. like we said, Rockridge is at Newman. Mitch, did you know that Newman has Chicken George in the press box? You're thinking deeply on this.
No, I'm sighing with disappointment. Because, well, one, I didn't know that, and I don't go to Newman games, so I would love to, be a part of that. But then I'm conflicted. Do you want to be eating greasy Chicken George, or would you rather have a delicious Arthur's sandwich when you're watching a football game?
And you know what we say about Arthur's, Mitch? Not a sponsor, but could be.
Not a sponsor, but they could be.
Yeah. Answer those emails, Arthur's. We want a sponsorship here.
Come on, people. Well, okay. Well, let's say you're in Newman not covering the game with a camera. You're in the press box. Would you rather have Chicken George and Jan sauce, get all greasy fingers, or Arthur's?
Well, that is a really tough call. I will say that one of my students, one of my St. Ambrose students that I teach, he does radio for WRMJ for the Orion games. They were in Orion, or Orion was in playing Newman last week, and he was in the press box. He said a couple helpings of the Candlelight Inn.
Yeah, you can't have just one. Yeah, you could have just one.
So he thoroughly enjoyed it. I don't know if he's ever experienced Arthur's though. So
yeah, see, the Chicken George just seems like a post game for me. I'd rather just have the non-messiness of an Arthur sandwich, but that's just me.
You know the problem, I love walking the sidelines and shooting video. I do. But the problem is I never have time to get up to the press box to see if there's, media food being offered. And certainly I would not have known about this. So it's
who at least did it right the last time I was there. The River Bandits had Chick-fil-A.
Yeah.
Just a warming bag of individual sandwiches. It was amazing. I was even working there and I got up there.
Yeah.
And I just took food. It was Chick-fil-A, you kidding me?
For Mitch Stormer, former River Bandit employee, correct? Former intern, or did you?
Yeah, I interned there when I was in college.
Okay.
Sergeant Slaughter put me in the sleeper hold while I was there. So yeah, great memories from those days.
You've never been the same since.
So I survived, and I'm here. So yeah.
All right, let's get into the Three Rivers, Mississippi. The big game.
Off the rails.
The big game, the rivalry game between Princeton and Kewanee. I believe I saw the 126th meeting all time.
I believe so. Yeah.
Between those schools, they play for the big, gorgeous blue and orange trophy. It's remarkable. Princeton comes away with the win, 44-15. Casey Etheridge, 190 yards, 4 touchdowns. That's a helmet nominee. That was helmet worthy in a rivalry game, but he comes up short this week to Brayden Little. He's
won before. He's won before.
He's got a helmet on his shelf already. That's correct. Ace Christensen with 92 yards, the pace right behind him. And Ian Morris resets the Princeton high school record for longest field goal. This Ian Morris is becoming a story in Princeton. What an effort from him.
It's a great story. I think you had mentioned that Dan Pearson had a good shot of this.
Yep.
Our guy Kevin Hieronymus had a good shot of this too. So shout out to Ian Morris. Just setting records.
Yep, absolutely. The Tiger defense held Alex Duarte for Kewanee to just 32 yards. So if you followed along with Kewanee and Alex Duarte, I've heard from coaches around the league about how hard he is to game plan for. So that's a remarkable effort there from the Princeton Tiger defense. Positive sign for them moving forward for sure.
Yeah, they are cruising. So that's 3 straight weeks that they've been 40 or more points and have allowed 15 or less. Almost identical scores. I'm looking at the schedule. I'm sorry.
They gave up 18 to Rockridge.
Yeah, I was looking at it wrong. That's my fault. Either way, 2 straight games, over 40 points scored, and that's huge in the way the defense is playing going into this Week 5 game, which we'll talk about in a minute, on the road against Monmouth-Roseville.
Yep. Well, speaking of Monmouth-Roseville, 49-10 win over Mendota. Monmouth-Roseville, first 4-0 start in their school history since they've combined with Monmouth and Roseville. They led this one 42-0 at half, so really kind of cruised their way to victory. Peyton Thompson, 6 rushes for 118 yards and 2 touchdowns. Nick Houston had 46 yards and a touchdown.
Catches, Greg. I'm talking about Monmouth Roseville. Catches.
I know. Hold on. No. We'll get there. Andrew Way with 36 yards and a touchdown. Andy Myers with a touchdown run of 22 yards. Mitch, I misspoke and said that Peyton Thompson caught the ball 6 times, but he didn't catch it that much. But they did pass the ball. We have breaking news here. We have Andy Myers passing stats for Monmouth Roseville.
I guess that they have to. I mean, it worked.
I don't know if they had to, but they chose to.
Right. They proved that they could do it. So, yeah, look, great win for Monmouth Roseville. Been really high on the Titans all year. Still continue to think that they're the biggest threat to Princeton, that we're going to settle it on the field this week. But boy, they have been fun to watch. They're going to be a pretty formidable team in 3A once playoffs come around.
Yep. So let's give the numbers. Andy Myers, 2 for 2 for 49 yards as quarterback. He also was catching passes on the defensive side of the ball. He had an interception along with Elliott Rogers. Nick Houston had a sack and a fumble forced, and Dame Touveau had a fumble recovery. So overall, just a solid performance here. Great work for Monmouth Roseville. They've looked good. We'll talk about their matchup in a minute. It's a big one. But one more game here. Sherrard gets the win 20-14 over Spring Valley Hall. Good to see Carter Brown get a pair of rushing touchdowns in this one. He's back, and just, good for this Sherrard program because they've been struggling. They've been struggling with injuries, struggled on the field with some tough opponents to start the season, but they come away with this one with a victory at home over Spring Valley Hall.
Yeah, good to see Carter Brown back on the field. Had I known that, I might have picked Sherrard to win this game. Instead, I picked Hall. But yeah, we would love to see Carter Brown back. He's an exciting player, and as you mentioned, good for Sherrard to get that first win. Got a chance to win 2 in a row here this week with their game against Mendota.
Well, let's talk about it. Sherrard will be on the road at Mendota. Kewanee will go on the road to Spring Valley Hall. And the big matchup in Week 5 in the Three Rivers, Mississippi Conference, Princeton goes on the road to Monmouth Roseville. Mitch, I talked about it in the Instant Reacts podcast. Matt Randazzo from WQAD was on the podcast. I already called it out. This is where I'm going. I'm going to see this game. I have not seen Princeton this season yet. I have not seen Monmouth Roseville this season yet. This was a game that I had circled, in the offseason when we were looking ahead at schedules. And I thought there was a chance that both teams would be undefeated heading into this one because I just liked what both of them had. And when we made our preseason predictions, we had Princeton at number 1. We had Monmouth Roseville right behind them at number 2. And here it goes. For Monmouth Roseville, this is a huge opportunity at home.
Yeah, really, really looking forward to this game. Certainly, Monmouth Roseville looking for some redemption from last year. Did I remember correctly that they played twice last year?
They did. They played once in Week 1, which was at Monmouth Roseville. They played in the second round of the playoffs, and now they're playing again this week.
Okay. Yeah, and looking back at it, they played on both ends of their schedule. They played them in Week 1 and then in that second round. 40-0 win for Princeton Week 1, 35-0 win for Princeton in the second round of the playoffs. So if you're the Titans, I can't imagine that they haven't been chomping at the bit for this game to get back at it. I think Monmouth Roseville is stronger this year. I don't know that Princeton is as strong, but that's also very relative because Princeton's just always have that high bar.
Yep.
So my point being is that I don't think it'll be a 35-0 game. I'll give this one the same kind of treatment that it's a toss-up, and I'm really going to have to think about who I'm going to pick in this game. But ultimately, whoever wins this one, I do believe will go on to win the division.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I'm really curious to see how Monmouth Roseville's size stacks up against this Princeton squad. That's what we've talked about with Monmouth Roseville. What they do really well is that size. How does that match up against Princeton? They're always good up front. Princeton's a strong team, Are they as strong as Monmouth Roseville up front? Princeton certainly has the weapons and the athletes, to match up with anybody in the conference.
Well, and that's the thing is, does Noah Laporte make his return in week 5? He's been on the sideline for the past couple of weeks. Not sure the extent of the injury, not going to speculate on that at all. But if he is back, boy, that's just another weapon that Princeton can utilize in this game.
Yep. All right, so Kewanee is on the road at Spring Valley Hall. So we just talked about Princeton got the big win in the rivalry game. Kewanee now sits at 1-3, but I think they have a winnable stretch here. They got to get the job done in a few games. There's a path to 5 wins here for the Boilermakers, but they got to play consistently good football to get the job done, and it starts this week on the road at Hall.
Yeah, I think they'll get back on the winning ways here against Hall. And then, they've still got Mendota, Sherrard, and Orion, and throwing a game against Newman in there too, which they could match up great against in a game against Newman. So yeah, it's been 2 rough weeks. They played Monmouth Roseville really, really tight.
Yeah.
Before Princeville kind of took it to them, but there's opportunity here for Kewanee to get it back.
Yep. So see what they can do in the other game here. Mendota and Sherrard, 2 teams that have struggled out of the gates here. Mendota at 0-4, Sherrard at 1-3. So an opportunity here for somebody to build momentum. Obviously for Sherrard, they could win 2 games in a row. And then sitting at 2-3 at the halfway point, they still got some games there that they could win. They got a couple tough matchups against Monmouth Roseville and Kewanee, but you still have Orion, Riverdale on the schedule. So, see what they can do down the stretch here. But this seems like a pivotal game if they want to, get to that potential 4-win mark, maybe 5 wins.
Yeah, I think the way Sherrard's playing with Carter Brown back now, I think that is, I think 4 wins is more realistic than 5, but that doesn't count them out. It doesn't count them out at all. But I think this will be another win for Sherrard. They'll get 2 in a row with some momentum going into Monmouth Roseville and Kewanee the next 2 weeks.
All right, does that wrap up the 3 rivers? You got anything else, Mitch? Are we headed to the Lincoln Land?
Yeah, we're headed to the LLC.
All right, let's go. It's all business in the LLC. We haven't made that joke in a while, so
that should have been a shirt.
Oh, that's true. What next? We got to get that. We got to get that one up and rolling. All right. Yeah. There you go. Anyone, any fans of the LLC, keep that in mind. It's coming. Be on the look for it. We'll get it out there. All right. The LLC large division carrying the headlines so far this year have been Elmwood, Brimfield, and Farmington. Mitch, they're on a collision course for week 5. We'll get to it in a second here, but let's talk about what happened to them in week 4. Another team as well is playing really good football, that being Macomb. So we'll go down the list here. We'll start with Farmington. They get the win 48-6 over Bureau Valley. Lane Wheelwright continues to produce 215 yards, 3 touchdowns, 43 yards on the ground, and 2 more touchdowns. So overall, great game from him, but he's got weapons out there. Mitch, tell us who he's throwing to.
Oh yeah, this Farmington team is just loaded with weapons. Carter Lambin, Landon Crawford, Jack Gronwald, who we talk about a lot. Boston Smith, Jarrett Bowser, all catching passes for the Farmers. Bowser scored his first touchdown of the season and led his team on the other side of the ball too with 5 solo tackles. So really good game for him. But for Farmington, they're just so good. I ranked them very highly in my 3A rankings this week. And they've just been so much fun to cover the past couple seasons. But as you kind of alluded to here, and we'll talk about the Trojans in a minute, big time clash here coming up in week 5.
Yep. Let's talk about Elmwood Brimfield, the team that they'll be matching up with. They also remain undefeated. They're now sitting at 4-0. They get the win 61-29 over St. Teresa out of Decatur. Bo Windish, 332 total yards, 6 touchdowns. Matthew Glenn also paced him with 153 yards and 2 touchdowns. On the defensive side of the ball, Eric Vasquez led the team with 9 tackles. So overall, a great non-conference win here for Elmwood Brimfield. Was this one on the road or did they host this one? No, it was on the road. So a good road win for the Trojans here. They remain undefeated. They're playing really well. They're playing really good football.
Yeah, this game in week 5, I think, will be their toughest game of the season. Certainly not a stretch to say that against Farmington, but just with what they have left. A game against Macomb in week 7, that'll be a really,
Yep.
really good matchup between those two schools. But boy, the Trojans are looking at that they could be 9-0. I think 8-1 is within reason. I think 7-2 at worst. So this is a team that went 4-5 last year. A great job by Coach Hollis and the Trojan program to really, really, I mean, they're scoring a ton of points here this year so far, 41, 42, 71, and 60. They'll need to do it against Farmington, and they'll need their defense to maybe play a little bit tighter. But this has been such a fun start to the season for them.
Yeah, you got the sense early in the season that Coach Hollis was excited about this group and excited to see if they could, jump their way up the standings. So far, so good. They've looked really good. They're, like I said, they're undefeated. They're 4-0, along with Farmington and along with Macomb. Macomb also gets the win. They're now 4-0. They're actually 4-0 in conference as well in their division. They have not played a non-conference game yet this year. So they get the win 48-22 over West Hancock. Macomb's dual threat quarterback, Braden Holthouse, led the way. He had a few impressive runs in this game. Senior Jaron Petty had a nice game at running back. He actually grew up in the West Hancock area, so a little extra special for him. And then hearing Coach Horrell's post game, he was impressed with his team's defense against a West Hancock team, obviously led by Coach Dorothy, who puts up a ton of points. So it's always a challenge, right? Regardless of West Hancock's record, they come in and week out, and they can put up some points on you. To hold them to 22, I think, is a good effort for this Macomb defense.
It's, Macomb being undefeated again, as we just kind of mentioned with a matchup against Elmwood Brimfield coming up. They've been good. They were good 2 seasons ago. They went undefeated in the regular season,
Yes,
if I remember
did.
that correctly. And that was the first time they'd done that in school history. Tough year last year, but boy, they've bounced back. So you mentioned it. Braden Holthouse has been fun to watch, as this entire Bombers team has been.
Yep. On the flip side of things, rough stretch here for West Hancock in the last 3 weeks.
Yeah.
They have to play the 3 teams we've just talked about: Farmington, Elmwood, Brimfield, and Macomb. So certainly some games down the stretch.
And Stark County in week 5.
Yeah. Oh, geez. Yeah. So it doesn't get a whole lot easier.
But after that, it's very manageable for West Hancock after that.
Yeah, I was just going to say, there should be some games down the way, and then you say they have to play an undefeated Stark County team. But
their opponent records thus far: 2-2, 4-0, 4-0, 4-0, and 4-8.
Yeah. Yep. So I think that this, team in West Hancock, led by Coach Dorothy, I think there's some wins there on the schedule. And, like you said, they could play offense. They could put up points with anybody. So we'll see what they can do. Coach Horrell on Macomb, has them at 4-0 and doesn't even think they played their best game yet. So, it'll be interesting to see in those matchups against Farmington and Elmwood Brimfield how they match up, down the stretch. This is going to be an intriguing division to watch, especially with those 3 teams how it all plays out. So a couple more games here. Illini West gets the win 40-20 over South Fulton. Chargers get a much needed win here. We talked them up last week as a potential playoff team, despite their start to the season. And this was the way they needed to get it done, right? You gotta win the first one. So here we are.
Yeah, they get the first one. They've got LVC this week, Knoxville, Bureau Valley, and West Hancock. So, we just talked about West Hancock's schedule thus far. Well, how about Illini West, Farmington, Elmwood, Brimfield, Macomb in the first 3 weeks, and then they get this win over South Fulton. So, hardest part of their schedule is gone in the rearview mirror, and now they can move forward.
Yep. All right, one more game to cover here on the LLC large school side of things. It's Knoxville getting the win 49-18 over LVC. The Blue Bullets get the W from Lewistown, Spoon River Valley, Cuba Miners Co-op. So like Illini West, a much-needed bounce-back win for the Blue Bullets if they want to try to make a playoff push. It's a long road ahead, but you got to start somewhere, like we talked about.
Yeah, finally looked like a Knoxville score that we're accustomed to seeing. But again, they played Elmwood, Brimfield, Macomb, and Princeville, 3 undefeated teams their first 3 weeks. So they get this one over LVC. They've got BV, they've got Illini West, they've got West Hancock in the next 3 weeks, and then a Fulton team that they might match up well against. So yeah, there's still a shot here for Knoxville despite that slow start.
Those are 3 really intriguing matchups to me. For teams that are looking to make that playoff push. When you start talking about Knoxville, Bureau Valley, Illini West, and potentially West Hancock. Obviously, West Hancock sitting at 0-4, they have a lot of work to do. But I do think that, like I said, I do think there's some wins on their schedule. Those 3 teams, the parity could be there. That could be some really good football.
I think the winner of Knoxville and Bureau Valley will make it to the playoffs.
Okay. Yep. Good call.
That's my prediction.
There you go. I like it. All right. Should we get into the games here then? Illini West will go on the road to LVC. It's Elmwood Brimfield hosting Farmington. West Hancock hosting Stark County. Knoxville on the road at Bureau Valley. And Macomb goes on the road for a non-conference game against Breeze Mater Dei. Actually, no, Macomb is hosting against Breeze Mater Dei. There we go. So, to me, it's that Elmwood Brimfield Farmington game that carries the headlines here.
Yeah, I think so too. I don't know that the outcome is out of question on any of the other games outside of maybe Knoxville and Bureau Valley. So, yeah, Elmwood, Brimfield, and Farmington is certainly the spotlight here in the large side. I think, again, the 3rd or 4th time I've said it, that I think that this is one of the games this week that's going to determine a division. And I'm really, really excited to see how Elmwood Brimfield stacks up against Farmington's. They've just been so dynamic on offense, and their defense has been great. Whereas Elmwood Brimfield, has been scoring a ton of points, but the defense hasn't been as tight. So, yeah, can't wait for that one. Like I mentioned, I think the winner of Knoxville and BV will eventually go to the playoffs. So I think that's kind of a must-win for both of those teams. And, we'll see if Illini West can get 2 in a row. I think as we just talked about what they've got left, I think it's very manageable for them to go on a run to get a win on the road here against LVC.
Yeah, I look at Macomb. They're taking on Breeze Mater Dei at home. Mater Dei sitting at 2-2. Macomb's the bigger school. Mater Dei's been pretty good over the last few years. So interesting to see how Macomb fares when they step out of conference play here. And then they really ramp up, Mitch. They got Farmington on the road the following week in week 6. In week 7, they have Elmwood Brimfield on the road. So Macomb will have this, ramp up matchup in the non-conference. And then they got their 2 hardest games of the year back-to-back traveling to Farmington and Elmwood Brimfield.
The View from the West Player of the Week is brought to you by Breedlove Sporting Goods, Western Illinois' premier sporting goods store for uniforms, apparel, equipment, awards, and online team stores. They offer name brands such as Adidas, Under Armour, and Nike, and are extremely responsive with any inquiries. With a primary focus on the western side of the state of Illinois, Breedlove Sporting Goods is the fastest way to outfit your team. You can check them out on Facebook or at breedlovesports.com, or shoot Cal Breedlove an email at calbreedlove@gmail.com.
This is Dan Pearson of Fellowship of Christian Athletes. Our FCA team of staff, board, and volunteers is pleased to support View from the West with Greg and Mitch. Our Northwest Illinois FCA team is 3 teams in 1, serving coaches and athletes in the 3 Rivers, Northern Illinois, and Greater Peoria areas, all with schools covered by View from the West. For more information, email me at danpearson@fca.org. FCA, the heart and soul in sports.
The Quad City's first and only fantasy football show, For Fantasy's Sake, has you all covered when it comes to all of your fantasy football needs. The guys come to you live every Sunday morning during the football season from 10 to 11:30. They've got the best analysis, rankings, DFS, and gambling advice between the Rock and Mississippi Rivers. So tune into For Fantasy's Sake every Sunday during the football season from 10 to 11:30 a.m. on Facebook and YouTube.
Hey, this is Brett Bielma, the head coach of the Fighting Illini from Prophetstown, Illinois. You're listening to the View from the West podcast.
Getting into the LLC small school division, Stark County remains undefeated. They get the win 33-13 over Havana, tied at halftime, but the Rebels score 13 in the third, 13 more in the fourth to pull away with the win in this one. Another nice game from Nolan Orwig, 145 yards and 3 rushing touchdowns. He led the way for Stark County. On the defensive side of the ball, Chase Holstrom had 10 tackles, Chet Gillespie with 9. So great overall effort from this Rebels team, and they're sitting on top of the standings here. They remain undefeated at 4-0, but there's one more team still undefeated.
Yeah. Sticking with Stark County for the moment, just again, really impressed with what they've been doing year after year. Nolan Orwig, we say his name every single week. So for them to be in a close game against a Havana team that doesn't have the wins, but have seemed to have played, or I'm sorry, they've won one. I'm sorry. But have seemed to have played tight games. They played that really tight game against Princeville. So for Stark County to come out in that second half and get that shutout and get their offense going, good for them. But yeah, this is setting up for a big matchup here coming up.
Yeah, you talked about it quickly. When you look at that Havana team, Mitch, through the 4 weeks of the season, they're only 1-3, but their point total is 96, and they've only given up 109. So pretty close point differential, considering that you're sitting at 1-3. Obviously indicates they've been playing some really close football games here. Obviously the one against Princeville that they, all but should have won, right? Outside of
fumbled away.
Outside of one bad miscue at the very end, they had that game won. So I do think that Havana program is playing much better now, much better football. Yeah. So anyway, we'll see what they can do down the stretch. But the team I referenced, the other team undefeated in the LLC small school side of things, Princeville gets the win over previously unbeaten ROWVA Williamsfield, 26-14. Princes jump out to a 20-0 lead at the half. A pair of Cougar touchdowns from Talon Hull in the second and the third quarters would cut the lead to 20-14 before Jake Williams, quarterback for the Princes, would seal the win with his 4th touchdown pass of the night. For the Princes, that was just with a little over 3 minutes left in the game. Overall, Mitch, Jake Williams has really caught my attention this year for the Princes. Mm-hmm. He's playing really well, and he's leading this Princes team, and they're playing really good football.
Yeah, 16-23 for 172 yards in this game, 4 touchdowns. That brings up his season to 660 yards, 12 touchdowns to only 2 interceptions. So, yeah, this has been a surprise, I think, for Princeville to be unbeaten. We've spoken for the past couple of years how they're always just kind of a team that hangs in that 5-4 mark. Not going to be the case this year, I can tell you that much. But it's largely in part to the play of Jake Williams.
Yeah, I would agree. And he's finding some, dangerous weapons on the outside. His receivers, Brady Day, 4 receptions, 57 yards and 2 touchdowns. Jet Benningfield, great name.
Great name. All name team.
They called that out on WQAD the other week too. Jet Benningfield, 4 receptions, 37 yards and 2 touchdowns. On the defensive side of the ball, Caden Sarnes with 13 tackles, 2 forced fumbles, and Benningfield had 8 tackles. So overall, Prince is looking really good here. I think I'm going to see Princeville this week because they are on the road at United.
That's United.
Yeah. So I think I'm going to start at that game in United and then head to Monmouth, Roseville, Princeton. So I'm excited for that stretch, excited to see the Princes here. For ROWVA Williamsfield, Jack Cordell, 79 yards, a long run of 20 yards. Talon Hull was also a bright spot on the offense, 74 yards and those 2 touchdowns that we referenced. But overall, the Princes really contained what ROWVA Williamsfield did all night. They limit the Cougars to just 133 yards. So ROWVA Williamsfield suffers their first defeat of the year. They're sitting at 3-1. This Princeville team, like we said, they're undefeated right up there with Stark County. That should be a fun matchup down the way in a few weeks. Let's get into one more game, or a couple more games in the LLC. Anawan Wethersfield gets the win 42-8 over United. Titans bust out 29 second quarter points to run away with this one from United. Quarterback Maddox Heisler with 134 yards, 2 touchdowns. He's actually moved from wide receiver to quarterback because of injury. He looked like a good playmaker for them at the quarterback position, so that's a good sign for the Titans. Nick Thurston also on the receiving end of a big 40-yard touchdown pass in the first quarter. So this Titan squad kind of putting some things together. They're sitting at 2-2, but I think that's a sneaky 2-2 because whether they get healthy or not, I still think there's a lot of talent. And when they figure it out, this team could win some games.
Yeah, good to have them back in the win column here, regardless if they're healthy or not. And I think 2 games coming up here against A-Town and Havana, which are winnable, that would get them over 500. But then it's a tough stretch to end it for them too, with Farmington, ROWVA Williamsfield, and Princeville. So boy, they do have work to do, and you wonder if they do get healthy. I think the tide's kind of flip in their favor. But boy, the way that they played this week, like you mentioned, Maddox Heisler, great win, or a great performance in the win. So maybe they figure something out here and they can turn the season around. There's still plenty of time to do it.
Yep. One more score here. Rushville Industry gets the 40-32 win over A-Town. So Rushville Industry now sitting at 3-1. And I believe, if I check, yes, they've won 3 games in a row. They lost to Stark County in week 1, and now they've rolled off 3 in a row. They got a couple winnable games here in the next couple weeks. So,
yeah, and shout out to them and Coach Lafferty. They've now matched their win total from last season. So great turnaround for them. I think they're looking at 6 wins on the season, and maybe they sneak one in against ROWVA Williamsfield or against Princeville. So, yeah, this is it's been fun for the Rockets. Good start to the season.
All right, let's get into the matchups in week 5. A-Town goes on the road to Anawan Wethersfield. South Fulton hosts ROWVA Williamsfield. Havana goes on the road to Rushville Industry. Princeville on the road at Monmouth United. And Stark County at West Hancock. Just looking at that one right there real quick, that crossover game, we referenced it a little bit earlier. But West Hancock's always kind of a sneaky team. You really got to be careful when you go up against that offense. You got to be able to, be prepared to stop their kind of spread out air attack.
Yeah, I think we've seen Stark County play a couple of tight games this season. They're undefeated, but they, haven't been dominating those games. I don't think so. If West Hancock can just kind of stick around, they've got the tools to do it. Maybe catch Stark County off guard, especially hosting that game. Yeah, that should be a good matchup. I'm looking at this is kind of one of those weird weeks too, where I think there's a favorite, probably an easy favorite in each game this week.
Yep.
So, again, can Rushville Industry get to 4 wins? I think they can. If Havana is always, as you mentioned, playing tough at every game. So, we'll see if they can continue to do that, or if the Rockets can continue their winning ways. But yeah, I think that's probably, if I had to pick one, that would be the game that I have the most intrigue with is Savannah at Rushville Industry.
Okay. Yep. I think, maybe when you start looking down the way, maybe unlike some other conferences, this is a conference where in this division, in this week in particular, I should clarify that, yeah, you can kind of look through each matchup and maybe you predict a winner with a certain amount of confidence. But maybe what I will say is maybe turn that around and say, these are games that team that you think is the favorite, it becomes that game you got to take care of business, right? Like you absolutely cannot get caught looking weeks ahead, or, that trap game will sneak up and get you. So I think a lot of these teams, you start looking around and say, you got to be focused, right? You got to be focused on the opponent that's there in front of you, because it may not be the marquee matchup, but it is a game that a lot of these teams, they're banking on. They need it, right? Moving forward. So, all right, let's get into the Northwest Upstate Illini Conference. Lena Winslow gets the win 50-0 over Dakota. Panthers score 5 touchdowns of 70 yards or more. Truth be told, you put that note in. I had not read that until just right now. That is remarkable. That's a game I want to be at, right? I want to get those kind of highlights.
You wouldn't have had to been there long.
No.
Yeah, this was this was over as it started. Dakota's having a tough year. There's no way around it. And to play a Lena Winslow team that is just firing on all cylinders. So, yeah, they were out early. Jalen Rakowska had 3 carries for 161 yards and 2 touchdowns. One of those carries netted no gain. So,
oh wow,
really 2 carries, 161 yards and 2 touchdowns. So,
wow,
2 of the 5 long touchdowns were his. So, we'll get into this in just a minute with what Lewin's having to deal with. But for now, they're 4-0. I believe they will secure one way or another win number 5 here in week 5. But they continue to be the top dog in this incredibly tough conference, as we talked about in the open.
Yep, for sure. All right, a couple of statement games I feel like this week for teams really kind of, they were kind of on our radar. Now they're like, they're there, right? Stockton's one of those teams. Stockton really impressed me in this one. They get the win 38-20 over Fulton. Stockton outran the Steamers 382-64 in the win. What work here from the Blackhawks? They can pound the rock. They can get the job done on the ground. Mitch, you love their uniforms, and you got to love that run game. Am I right?
Boy, they've been so impressive this year. We talk about their rise and the changes that they made to their coaching staff, and then bringing in a strength and conditioning coach, and it is working for the Blackhawks. So this game surprised me. I mean, I was watching the scoring updates come in, and unfortunately they were coming from the feet of Jeff Parsons, who is on the Fulton side of things. But just to kind of see Stockton just kind of dominate this game, right? You mentioned it, 382-64. I mean, when was the last time that happened in a game against Fulton? But Mark Detweiler, 3 touchdowns for Stockton for him. They threw 2 passes in this game. They were 1 for 2. The one completion was a 35-yard touchdown pass from Noah Larson to Carter Blair in the third quarter. Kind of just gave that little bit of separation in this game. So. Super, super impressed with Stockton here in this game and in this season moving forward. As I kind of ranted about in the beginning, teams are going to fall in this conference and teams are going to rise. And for a long time, it's been, like I said, maybe those same 6 teams. That's out the window now. All these teams are really good. All these matchups week in and week out are going to be. You're going to see games like this. You're going to see games that are a little bit tighter, and you're going to see matchups or victories from teams that you maybe haven't seen in years prior. So this was one of them, and good for the Blackhawks.
Yep. Like we said, I think this is a statement win for this Stockton Blackhawks program. Mitch, I think it's also a statement win, a statement game of the week. How about that?
Yeah, I think this is a fitting game for our game of the week. View from the West game of the week is sponsored by Nate Neighbor of Modern Women of America. From protection to savings to retirement, contact Nate Neighbor today to put together your financial game plan. He's always just a call away at 309-233-2656. Modern Women, touching lives, securing futures.
All right, a few more games to get to in the Northwest Upstate Illini before we look ahead. Dupek 30-0 over Morrison. Cooper Hoffman finishes 13 of 20 passing, 208 yards, tallies 3 total touchdowns. Tallies 3 touchdowns on the ground as well. So the Rivermen remain unbeaten. Great work here from Dermot Dolan, added a rushing touchdown as well. Dolan led the team with 85 yards rushing. So that's a name that's kind of come on our radar this year for the Rivermen. Jackson Dietrich, Brody Black, each over 90 yards receiving. But I wonder when the last time Dupek won a game without a touchdown pass. That's kind of interesting because they're usually a balanced offense, but they'll throw the ball a lot. And that is interesting. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe the forcing game last year when it was raining real bad, but I think they might have scored on a pass that night. I don't remember, but regardless, it probably happened like 3 weeks ago and we just made up a stat for no reason, but it just goes to show that we don't expect that too much from the Rivermen. But Morrison coming off of that win against Galesburg, thought they would perform a little better, but I think that's again it's a testament to what Dupek's been doing for the last as long as we've been doing this show, right?
Yep.
I think even though we're seeing Stockton and EPC make rise, Dupek still remains the top threat to Lena Winslow. They win this game without throwing a touchdown pass, and they can do it on the ground with their great playmakers. So great one for the Rivermen here as they remain unbeaten.
Yeah. You know what's kind of fun, Mitch, is that the Dupek Rivermen have kind of grown up along with our podcast, right? Like, as we got started, that was kind of right when they made their push and we're starting to win football games. And now here we are. Look at us both, all grown up, doing well.
Yeah, we've been riding with the Rivermen for a while here. We saw them, be conference champions a couple years back. So yeah, it's a fun program. It's a great coach there, and Coach Hoffman, great players, fun to cover. And they looking here ahead a little bit. They've got Galena this week. Could be a sneaky game for Galena, but then if they get past that, Lena Winslow in week 6. So the bulk of Dupek's schedule, and again, you can say this about a lot of teams in the NUIC, but a lot of season left for Dupek. But just me, I'm looking forward to that Lena Winslow game in week 6.
Wow, yeah. So they have Galena and Lena Winslow in back-to-back weeks here. Let's talk about Galena first. 29-19 win over Fenimore in Wisconsin. Roman Romer, 13 of 23, 187 yards and 3 touchdowns. Big night on the ground once again from Miles Schumacher, 193 yards, 29 carries and a touchdown. He had 33 yards receiving and a touchdown. So overall, good win for the Pirates. They now sit at 3-1 on the season.
Yeah, we don't, know much about Fenimore, but regardless, we've been calling out Miles Schumacher name for basically every game so far. So for four games, him and Roman Romer have really been impressive for this Galena team. That's again on the rise, sitting here at 3-1. Their only loss coming in that week 1 matchup against EPC. So Galena's got a tough stretch. They got Dupek this week, Fulton after that. I'm still kind of, again, looking at the crystal ball a little bit. They got Stockton in week 9. Could that be a game where the winner of that one is one of the final teams out of this conference to get into the playoff? Galena might have 5 wins by then. I don't know. Stockton might too. So we'll see. But regardless, this is a 3 wins in a row for Galena, and they've looked good doing it.
I think next week is the crystal ball episode, Mitch. We did that last year, and it was a lot of fun. I think we stare into the crystal ball and we see the signs.
Do we do it after week 6 or after week 5, or do we do it going into week 7?
I think last year we actually did it a week before this. We did it when we had 4 or 5 games left. Yeah, but I think next week will be perfect. 4 games left.
That's fine. I just know that week 7 across all of our teams, there are some really, really good games.
Okay.
So we'll see. We'll play it by ear, but especially in the Western Big 6, especially in NUIC, those last 3 weeks are going to be pivotal to either who gets in or how they shape up the conference standings.
Well,
we'll figure that out.
Whenever we can find our crystal ball, that's when we'll get it out. We'll start.
Yeah, we got to dust it off and we'll find it.
Okay, there we go. All right, one more game in the Northwest Upstate Illini. Eastland Pearl City gets the win, 36-16 over Forreston. They jumped out to a 20-0 lead in this one. Adam Awender had 4 touchdowns and 186 yards in just 7 carries. So Awender, is it Awender or Awender, Mitch? I want to get it correct.
I think it's Awender.
Awender. All right, so I had it right the first time. I should have questioned. Did I? I don't know. All right. And Draven Zaire also had 90 yards on the ground. I want to get these names right because I feel like we're going to be talking about them a lot in the next couple weeks. So,
yeah, I feel like it's Awender and Draven Zaire.
There you go.
Or Zaire? I don't
know. Okay. Maybe we'll have reach out to us. Let us know. So actually, I think Draven follows us on Instagram. So shout out to the Instagram page. He's a follower. Yeah. So great win for Eastland Pearl City. Mitch, this was a team that we, thought had potential early in the season, before the season got started. And here they are sitting at 3-1. They're right there in the mix along with Galena and Stockton. They're all right there. It's fascinating to see how it all plays out.
Yeah, I think EPC. I don't think this is a must-win for them against Stockton. I think that they've got 6 wins in the bag. So now if they can get this win against Stockton, it's 7-2 is within reach, and that's just an incredible testament to Coach McNutt. They went 3-6 last season.
Yep.
I think it's 6 at minimum, so we'll see these guys in the playoffs for sure. But I'm excited. These two teams, EPC and Stockton, have made such strides this year. They've been so impressive against really good opponents. And now we get to see maybe of the two who's the better one. So really, really looking forward to this Week 5 matchup.
All right, let's talk about Week 5 and then maybe look ahead a little bit at what's down the way. So Week 5, Dakota on the road at Fulton. Forreston goes on the road to Morrison. Galena at Dupec. Eastland Pearl City at Stockton, the game you just mentioned. And Lena Winslow, they were supposed to go on the road to Mineral Point. We have a bit of breaking news as of this afternoon that game is off the books. Lena Winslow is obviously scrambling to try to find anything, but the really disappointing part is the opponent that they nearly could have had if the timing would have broke just a little differently.
Right. Don't want to suggest that it would have happened because we don't know that.
No.
But just earlier in the day today, we found out that Maroa Forsyth had an opening. In the time between kind of that announcement and Lena Winslow's announcement, Maroa Forsyth, the top team in 2A, filled that vacancy with Dwight. But man, if we could have had a couple of hours,
I know
that conversation could have happened. I don't know if those coaches know each other. I imagine they've crossed paths. That would have been amazing. I was thinking about that too because I think HS Logos shout us out. I don't know if I responded to them or not. I want to see Lena Winslow and Maroa Forsyth with a 4-month buildup, not a 4-day buildup. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there you go.
Would have been great. Would have been great regardless. Would have been a lot of fun. But I want that to be like a Week 1 game that I'm looking forward to. Now there is an opponent out there. There's a big northern opponent out there that does not have a game in Rock Falls.
Yep.
That's the obvious answer logistically and just from an availability standpoint. I don't know if that's going to happen. You hope it happens, right? It's not going to matter for Lena Winslow for their playoff points because, one, I don't know how it works with out-of-state opponents anyway. 2, they're going to be most likely undefeated. It's not going to matter.
Yeah, it works the same. You still get the win total. It goes into your point total. Your playoff points is based on their wins. So regardless of where they're from. Yep. I
think they're going to defeat it and it's not going to matter at all. But more so, and I'm not going to speculate on Rock Falls. If it doesn't happen, I'll speculate it. But for now, it's just get these guys 9 games.
Yeah.
If you've got 2 programs within an hour of each other in the same predicament, just play.
Yeah.
Just play.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not suggesting that is not going to happen. By the time you guys are listening to this, that might have already materialized or it might not. I don't know. I just would hate to see 2 teams being an hour apart, being in tough circumstances and just not suiting up against one another. So, we'll see what happens there. Also, don't like reneging on a game on a Tuesday.
That is the weird part. So obviously I don't know anything about Mineral, Wisconsin.
We don't know what their circumstances are. But just play the game. I don't like it.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I mean, if they're a smaller school, if there's injuries that mounted up and they just don't have enough numbers to safely play, that's
obviously
a possibility.
Obviously, I understand.
Yeah,
obviously, I understand that.
It's a possibility, but yeah, it is a really tough situation, and it happens. It happens. That's what happened to Dwight. That's how Dwight had an open game and ended up matching up with Maroa Forsyth because they had, I think, Walter Christian in their conference backed out last second. And I'm guessing it's because of low numbers, maybe injuries, and, just not enough players on the field. So it's tough all the way around. But hopefully, by the time you're listening to this, hopefully Lena Winslow has filled that. And especially for their seniors, they'll get that, one more game on the schedule. So we'll see. What other games here, Mitch? What catches your eye?
All of them.
Yeah. Okay. There you go. You got to look at Eastland Pearl City and Stockton, right?
Yep. Yeah. That's my number one. I talked about that just a second ago. I think Fulton will take care of Dakota, and then they'll get back in their winning ways. You've got Forston going to Morrison. Two programs just reeling, not off to the starts that they want to be. So it'll be good for one of those two programs to get back in the win column. And then I think just from an intrigue standpoint, just right below EPC going to Stockton is Galena going to Dupec.
Yeah.
Is Galena for real being at 3-1? We know what Dupec can do. So I'm interested to see how Galena stacks up in that game against Dupec.
Yeah. I want to see Eastland Pearl City's defense go up against the Stockton rushing attack. How do they manage that? Obviously, we talked about Eastland Pearl City's got an offense of their own. They can do some damage on the ground, but I think that Stockton, the performance they had last week against Fulton really caught my eye. So I just want to see, does Eastland Pearl City, the Wildcats, have any answer for that? I think that's a big key in that game. But over that Eastland Pearl City Stockton game might be the ultimate toss-up game in the NUIC for the whole season, right? I mean, there's a lot of toss-up games, but that might be the ultimate toss-up.
Yeah, it's just fun because they're the two teams on the rise, and just get them on the field and see who comes out on top.
Forston and Morrison is a fascinating matchup. It's one of those games that, when Morrison moved into the NUIC, it's one of those games you want to see, right? Just two classic programs battling it out. That game will be at that game will be at Morrison. So we'll see if, Morrison can bounce back. Certainly Forston also looking to bounce back. Both teams sitting at 1-3. So teams looking to build a little momentum. We'll talk about what they have coming down the stretch in the coming weeks. But for this one, it'd be a big step for one of them to grab that second win. So, all right, let's get into 8-man football. And then once we're done with 8-man, Mitch, we'll talk more about 11-man. We'll start talking about teams around the state that we want to keep our eye on. So stick around for a minute here. We'll talk 8-man, then we'll talk about some teams from around the state. All right, so let's take a look at 8-man football. We start in the North Division. Milledgeville gets the win, 76-6. Mitch, you texted me during this one. What was the score at halftime?
Was it 70? I don't remember.
Was it 70-0?
I think so. A lot to a little. I think so.
It was a lot to a little. We'll go with that.
I think it was 70-0. I'm pretty sure.
Jeez. Carter Livingood has 200 yards receiving, 5 touchdowns on 5 catches. So the ultimate in efficiency there.
Yeah.
Tyson Frank was 9 of 10 passing, 256 yards and 6 touchdowns. Milledgeville gets the big win here. They're going to be tested down the way. We'll get into some of their matchups coming up. They're coming. The matchups of some of the big boys in the 8-man division are coming down the way. Not quite yet. We're getting
284 points scored for Milledgeville so far this year.
It's crazy. Yeah. It's crazy the numbers they've been putting up. And to think that, we knew Connor Nye wasn't going to be there, and he was such a dynamic weapon for them over the last few years. But we knew they had a lot of pieces back. And again, it's like we talked about at the beginning of the season. It's every week there's a different name, right? Every week there's somebody different, and the names rotate in and out. They're really efficient, really getting the job done, really playing well. Another team playing really well, and they're on a collision course with each other, is Polo. They get the win 50-0 over AFC. Gus Mumford had 2 touchdown passes and 2 rushing touchdowns with 117 yards on the ground. Noah Dewey, 117 yards as well, a rushing touchdown, and a 40-yard passing touchdown. So this Polo squad, same thing. They're putting up impressive numbers, but down the way, we got a big matchup coming. There's several teams here that are going to be interesting matchups.
Shout out to Gus. You don't see that name very often. So shout out to Gus Mumford.
There you go.
Great name. Great name. Great performance. But yeah, Polo is really on a good start. I think for them and for Milledgeville, not the meatiest part of their schedules, right? They're going to get into that now, especially Milledgeville. But, Polo, 3 straight shutouts for them. They've allowed 8 points this year. So,
wow, that's a statement. Yep, that's saying something.
Yeah, so they have been in the 50s each of the last 3 weeks and have not allowed a point. So they're on a roll.
Yep. Well, another game with a ton of points scored. Orangeville gets the win, their first win of the year. They win 82-58 over River Ridge. So shootout there. Is that the one that you referred to as a basketball score?
Yeah. I bet if you flash forward 2 months, you'll see something similar in the newspapers on the next, the morning after. So, yeah, I mean, hey, the Broncos, good win, 82 points. It's big time. So good for them.
Yeah. Well, we talked about Milledgeville and Polo in this 8-player North division as being undefeated. The other undefeated team, Mitch, we've talked a lot about them here. They're catching the attention in the headlines. West Carroll, 28-26. They come away with the narrow win over Alden Hebron. The Thunder rallied in the fourth quarter with a Rafe Pickert Shinjin 15-yard touchdown to put West Carroll up for good. Pickert Shinjin with 200 all-purpose yards. So this West Carroll team, it's a great story. They're now 4-0 on the season, right up there with Polo and Milledgeville.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know if this is maybe more of a come back down to earth game for West Carroll, but they certainly rose to the occasion, trailing and coming away with a victory. So you look at who they've played: 0-4, 1-3, 0-4, and now 2-2 in Alden Hebron. Haven't played the best, and I think that's just kind of how this 8-man schedule has kind of worked out for a lot of these teams. So this second half of 8-man football is going to be a lot of fun, but highlighted in week 5 by Milledgeville and West Carroll.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. We'll talk about the matchups here in a minute. Let's go to the West Division in 8-man football. Some more undefeated teams from our area. West Central, another team like West Carroll, kind of maybe grabbing some headlines here as an undefeated program that maybe we didn't expect, or they weren't on the top of our radar. They get the win 56-20 over Galva. Now, flipping to a team that's undefeated that was very much on our radar. Amboy gets the win 58-22 over Bushnell Prairie City. 463 yards rushing on 48 carries for the Clippers. Josh McKendry led the way with 185 yards and 4 touchdowns. You also had Braden Klein, 10 carries, 146 yards and a touchdown. Quinn Leffelman also added 3. So the Amboy Clippers continue to roll along. They look really good. They got a big matchup in the divisional play here against Ridgewood, who's sitting at 3-1.
Yeah, Ridgewood gets the win 48-14 over Peoria Heights, a name that we called a lot last year in Ridgewood's great season. Roy Sandberg, 125 yards, 2 touchdowns. It's over 500 yards and 8 scores on the year. Cameron Stiles added 108, 2 touchdowns. Gavin Franks added 1 as well. And then you've got their quarterback, Owen Anderson, 2 for 2 through the air, 86 yards, 2 touchdowns. Sandberg got 1. Aston Staley got the other. So, yeah, great win for Ridgewood. And here we go. Part 2 for Ridgewood and Amboy. Certainly they played twice this year.
Yep.
This is now a Thursday night, so you're going to be listening to this on Wednesday morning. This game will be tomorrow night in Cambridge.
Yeah, so big matchup there. You also mentioned that Milledgeville. We'll stick in the West Division first. So Amboy and Ridgewood play each other. You have West Central going on the road to West Prairie, who's 0-4. But hey, Mitch, this is West Central's last road game. The Road Warriors from West Central are looking to go 5-0 in their 5-game stretch on the road to start the season.
Yeah, we've talked at length on how this worked out, and It's incredible. So yeah, good for them to go on the road for 5 straight weeks. I do believe that they'll be 5-0 following that, and then a really, really good home slate with Bushnell Prairie City, Cornell Woodland, Amboy, and Ridgewood. So yeah, we'll see if West Central can keep it going, because they have looked good so far this year.
Now they look good so far, but it's not hard to tell. They're getting into the meat of their schedule now.
Yeah.
They've played several 0-4 teams. They played Galva twice, but now you're getting into, like you said, some teams up near the top of their standings with some impressive records. So see how they stack up.
And going back to Amboy and Ridgewood Part 2, this is a rematch of the Week 1 game, which did not count for conference. That was a 36-8 win for Amboy there in Week 1. Certainly their closest game of the year. Ridgewood seems to do that to the Clippers. So certainly Ridgewood's trying to get over the hump of surpassing Amboy. And we'll see if they can do it here against the defending champs.
Yep. All right, let's look at the North Division of 8-man football coming up for Week 5. Ashton Franklin Center goes on the road to South Beloit. You have River Ridge, who will host Kirkland Hiawatha. Polo will be hosting Alden Hebron. And then you mentioned Milledgeville will be going on the road to Savannah West Carroll. That's a big matchup there against undefeated teams at the top of their division here. Orangeville will be hosting Rockford Christian Life. Polo, like we mentioned, against Alden Hebron. I think the matchup here this week on this side of the division is going to be West Carroll and Milledgeville. This will be the big test for the Thunder. And I mean, a big test against a Milledgeville team that, I don't know how you find answers, how you stop them.
Right. Yeah, I think it's a bigger test for West Carroll than it is for Milledgeville. I believe Milledgeville to be very much for real. And I just want to see how West Carroll stacks up against competition like this. I think West Carroll will finish off with a great season. Let's see how they fare going up against one of the best teams in 8-man here in their first year in 8-man football. Great so far at 4-0, but this would be their first real big test against the Missiles.
Yep, exactly. I think for both of those teams, for both of the undefeated West teams, West Central, West Carroll, there's a lot of matchups coming up here that are going to kind of test them and kind of put them, kind of see where they stack up. Yep, I am interested. I think they're talented football teams. They've proved it. And I think for West Carroll in particular, I think winning a tough game, a tight game against Alden Hebron on the road, I think that's a big sign for them, right? Like, the winning has been happening. So obviously after a winless season in 8 or an 11-man football a year ago, you kind of learned how to win. But now that extra layer to it, you learn how to win a close game, right? You learn how to stay in it and compete. I think there's something to be said about that, getting a win like that going into this game against Milledgeville. That experience, that knowledge of how to play a close game, how to win a close game, I think that's important to build some confidence. So see how it plays out for them. All right, Mitch, before we wrap things up, we've talked about every team in our area. We talked a little bit about what their playoff outlooks look like, teams we're looking for down the way from our area, from our west side of the state. But I kind of want to look around the rest of the state. We do rankings every week with Kyle Kampmeyer and NUICfootball.com. He does a great job of coordinating those rankings, and I think it's a really good, accurate depiction of who is really good, who is, in the true top 10 around the state in classes 1A through 3A and an 8-man. I want to talk about some teams, Mitch. Who catches your eye? We'll start in 1A. We'll kind of work our way up. Who are teams you're watching for that you think we might see come playoff time squaring off with teams from our area?
Yeah, a lot of familiar names that we've seen in the past when it comes playoff time. I'll start with the bottom of our list here. Chicago Hope Academy, obviously a team that last year gave Lena an incredible game in the semifinals. Their biggest scare of the season prior to their state championship loss against CPC. Hope lost some players, but they look good this year. They're going to be a name to watch for sure. Aurora Christian is always in that mix.
Yep.
They've looked incredibly well so far this year as well. They'll certainly be in the North. Rockford Lutheran is a team that always finds themselves in that North bracket. But my focus and that I think we look forward to here in 1A is what and who is going to come out of the South.
Yeah. Yep.
There's 4 teams that I think will at one point or another, at some point they've already collided with when we talk about Camp Point Central and Calhoun, but there's a possibility that they do it again come playoffs time. Let's start at the top. It's Bellevue Althoff Catholic.
Yep.
The team we talked about last year. They dominate opponents. They've got D1 talent. They've got either commits or I don't know if they're commits, but Oregon, Boston College, and Missouri. They've got dynamic playmakers. They just had a huge win over Tolono Unity, a team much bigger than them in terms of size. Not unbeatable. CPC proved that last year, but this is a team. Look, they're not homegrown.
Yeah,
it's a small school, and it's within the rules of what they deal with. But again, CBC proved last year that it's not the tallest of tasks because they kind of beat them up pretty good. Last year. So they're number one. I think them and Lena Winslow, depending on what polls you look at, are usually the top 2 teams in the state.
Yeah, go ahead. No, I was going to say I agree with you on that one. And they're a team we watched, we knew last year, and Camp Point Central had a remarkable game plan, and they executed to perfection. They did everything they needed to do and played not just a good, solid football game. They played a great game and really kind of ran away with it.
It was perfect. I mean, it was darn near perfect.
And they ran away with that win, and really, I think, shocked Althoff and shocked a lot of people around the state. I think, not me, because I predicted it, but
right. Yeah. So certainly teams like that have all the talent in the world, but if you get their backs in the corner, they're never really in that. Maybe they were this week against Tolono Unity, and they came out on top, winning or scoring with no time on the clock, essentially. But regardless, the South is going to be strong this year. Calhoun is one. They're 4-0. They beat Camp Point Central.
Yep.
They've got a talk about all name team. Connor Longnecker is a running back for them. They play a third team that I would put on this list in Greenfield Northwestern on Friday. It's a huge showdown between 2 of the top teams in 1A. And then just the last team that we've talked about a lot over the last season is Camp Point Central, right? They're 3-1. As mentioned, they did fall to Calhoun late. That game went down to the wire, but still, the defending champs. They still do everything as strong as they did last year. A lot of names are back from last year's team. So just despite losing to Calhoun, it diminishes them none.
No. And one of the names you referenced, Elijah Genenbacher. He's moved now into the quarterback position. Matt Schuckman, Muddy River Sports, wrote a great article about his transition to quarterback. And it's funny to hear Coach Brad Dixon from Camp Point Central say he can literally do it all. We've used him at tight end, at running back, at wing, at linebacker. Now he's at quarterback. Like, that's just that type of game-changing athlete, that you want on the field. And Camp Point Central has that kid. And like you said, I think there's, it's one loss to Calhoun, but you just kind of wonder if they're going to get a shot at him again in the playoffs. And it's going to be interesting. And shout out, credit to, Logan from WIV on X. He shared with us that this showdown with Calhoun and Greenfield Northwestern, definitely a game to watch this week as those 2 teams from the South square off against each other in the WIV. So, all right, Mitch, I also, you referenced them earlier, Rockford Lutheran. They're always interesting to me because they come out of the Big Northern. They're a 1A school, but they're going to play some big time football in the Big Northern, and then they drop down into 1A. They're just a team that's always interesting to watch out for. I believe, they're sitting at 3-1 right now.
Yeah, 3-1.
Yep.
With their one loss being to Byron. But they've got wins over Stillman Valley, Winnebago, Rock Falls. Big game this week with them against Dixon, but still doesn't take away from the fact that they will be nowhere near these teams come playoff time. So they lost in the first round last year, but they'll certainly be back in the mix this year.
Yeah. It is interesting when you see a team like Stillman Valley sitting down there at 2-2. Normally a team you see up right at the top of that conference, right alongside of Byron. But this year it's Dixon up there. It's sitting at 4-0. They've put together...
Dixon beat Stillman Valley in week 1. Yep.
And Dixon's put together a great program over the last few years, and this year's no exception. So, all right, Class 2A. Some teams to watch for around the state. The first one, Quincy Notre Dame. This was a team we talked about on the Instant Reacts podcast. They took down Sacred Heart Griffin this past week. What a statement win. Maybe it's not the same SHG that we've seen over the years, but it's still SHG, right? It's still a remarkable win. It's a statement type of win.
Yeah, still a 4A, 5A school. So and we've been talking about Quincy Notre Dame since week 1 when they played Quincy.
Yep.
And even going back to last year, we talked about them because they started. I don't remember what their record was, but
they had to battle back, and I think they got in the playoffs at 4-5. Yeah.
Right. That's right. They're playing a lot better this year, at least record wise, indicates that. So this will be a formidable team that plays a tough slate of games, and they'll be ready to roll come playoff time.
Yeah, they're in the Central State 8 now, which is why they were playing Sacred Heart Griffin. This week they have an undefeated Springfield High team sitting at 4-0. They got down the way 0-4 Lamphere, Jacksonville at 3-1, and then a pair of 2-2 matchups with Lincoln and Decatur MacArthur. So, this team is one of those teams where they're going to get into 2A, and they may have a few losses, but they're going to be battle tested. They for sure will be a team. And the question always becomes, do they go north or do they go south? So that it becomes intriguing to watch for. Here's a few other teams, Mitch. Give us some teams that you're looking for in 2A.
I'll give you this, Greg. Quincy and Quincy Notre Dame, the only two schools in IHSA that begin with the letter Q.
Yeah, I know. It's always easy to look them up on IHSA.com.
Yeah.
Or IHSA.org. Sorry. There you go.
Right. We talked about them a little bit a second ago. Maroa Forsyth, obviously always in the mix in 2A. They've got so many trophies. If it's first or second, they are.
Yep.
They usually can make reservations in Bloomington every single year. So the Trojans, right? I want to say
correct.
They'll be up there. Chester has been a great team out of Cahokia, the Cahokia Conference this year. They're sitting at 4-0. Bloomington Central Catholic, a team that we talked about last year.
Yep.
Being kind of in that same kind of situation as Althoff, where it's a smaller school,
but they're in a big metro area. Yep.
Yeah. Right. So, but yeah, I think the top dog is going to be Maroa Forsyth if Wilmington does not come into 2A. We'll talk about them in just a second.
Yeah. I think when you start looking around Class 2A, what's really interesting to me is that you got teams like Quincy Notre Dame and teams like Bloomington Central Catholic. And, then you start talking about those teams may not have the best record going into the playoffs, but they're going to be pretty battle tested. They're going to be good teams. They play some bigger opponents. They're from metro areas, right? Like we've talked about. But Maroa Forsyth, Farmington from our area, Rockridge from our area, other names along the way in that top 10. Tri-Valley, Downs Tri-Valley, a team we talk about a lot come playoff time. Johnston City will be a team in the South. Shelbyville will be a team in the South. Chester will also be South. I believe Momence usually goes South. So that
I don't remember. I remember though last year we had a ton of talk about the 1A North, as we will every year. But I remember talking about last year how 2A North was crazy.
Yeah. Yes, and I agree, and that's kind of what I'm getting at. My point is there's going to be some teams that have maybe deceiving records, potentially 5-4 teams, 6-3 teams going up against a really good 9-0 team. And it's like you talked about way back in the beginning of this podcast, that it's going to be frustrating. Some of these matchups are going to seem way too early, is my point. And that's, that 2A bracket ends up being pretty tough in the north side. So see how it shakes out. But those are a few teams to look for there. So we talked about Bloomington Central Catholic in the Illini Prairie Conference. That's a team or a conference that impresses me. When you look at 3A, St. Joe Ogden is in that conference, along with Tolono Unity. In week 5, Bloomington Central Catholic plays Unity. In week 6, they play St. Joe Ogden. So some real heavy hitting matchups here in the Illini Prairie that I think will spell out a lot for how the 3A and the 2A bracket shapes up.
Yep. Two really traditionally great programs there in 3A. Just talk about Bloomington. They're getting ranked in 3A right now. They are the defending 2A champs, right?
Yeah, I believe so. Yes.
Right. Am I remembering that right? They've won recently. We'll say that. I look too at a team.
They beat Athens a year ago in the 2A state title game.
I look at a team like Lombard Montini. Kind of a sticking point when we're talking about them playing in 3A, but it is what it is. They just played against Fenwick, and they're a 7A school. They come out of the CCL White, where they play against St. Lawrence, which is 7A, Fenwick, which is 7A, Mundell and Carmel, which I think is similarly ranked. They're sitting at 2-2. That they might get into 3A at 5-4, and they'll make another run. That's just what they do. I think they came in at 6-3 last year before they lost, but this is always a team that, for whatever reason, they play 3A. But the big dog, as always, is Byron. They're playing right now shorthanded, and they're still dominating. So
yeah, that's what's crazy.
Yeah, the numbers the offensive records that they set last year, in terms of yards and touchdowns on the ground, and then what they did to what was the team that they played in the state championship game?
They played
burgundy and gold.
They played Mount Carmel out of Southern Illinois. Yep.
Yeah, and just destroyed them.
Yeah.
So, they have had no signs of letting up. From what it sounds like, what's in the Byron pipeline, they're not going to slow down for a long time. So this year, again, shorthanded. They're not even at full strength, and they're doing what they did last year. So I don't see any reason to think that, even right now, as we go into week 5, that Byron is not the by far and away favorite in 3A.
Yeah, I think they are the favorite. Until someone can knock them off, and we'll see if there's somebody that could do it. But as of right now, especially when you look back at what they did against Williamsville this year, and I believe that was on the road, correct? No, it was on the road at Williamsville.
I believe it was.
Yeah, and for them to come away with that statement type of win, just a huge win against a Williamsville program that we're always ranking in the top 10 as well, is really impressive. Obviously it's a top 10 list for a reason. There's a lot of really good teams in Class 3A's top 10 on both sides of the state, in the southern half and the northern half. So
yeah, look for week 8. Byron goes on the road to Dixon.
Yeah, that'll be huge. Yep. So, all right, Mitch, have we discussed everything there is to discuss heading in to week number 5?
I just sent out a tweet that said, I hope y'all like 3-hour podcasts, because we're getting pretty close to that. I don't think we'll reach it after you edit it, but pretty close.
Yeah, I looked earlier.
I think so.
Yeah, I was going to say, I looked earlier and thought, all right, we're moving along pretty quick. And then I looked again and thought, holy cow, time moves quick. So,
oh, no, it took us like 12 minutes to get through Quincy, and I knew from then we aren't getting out of here anytime soon. So,
hey, Mitch, time flies when you're having fun, right?
That's right.
You're having fun.
That's right. No, we had a lot to talk about.
Well, and we owe the people, because we kept them waiting an extra day So we said this was going to be the best View from the West podcast of all time. Because,
this is a great episode. This was a great episode.
Yep. Because as Cameron says from Quincy, View from the West is the best. So
that's right. We owe it to the people. So we'll try and keep our regularly scheduled programming on Tuesdays. So
right.
That was my fault, but we'll get better. All right. So you're going to Monmouth.
I'm gonna start at Monmouth United. They go up against Princeville. Then I'm gonna go hit the road into Monmouth and go to Coach Dobry Field for the Titans hosting Princeton. I'm excited.
How far are those schools?
Probably about 15-20 minutes. Not very far.
Okay. Is there a big gulp on the way?
I think Monmouth has one, but I don't know. I may not have time to stop between games. So I may have to get something on the way out of town. But yes, there'll be a big gulp in the car cup holder.
Yeah.
Yes.
Good.
Mitch,
all right. Well, that's
actually, have we talked about it on the podcast here? So there were 2 Circle K's in Rock Island, and one was down by the river. This is getting real inside baseball for those who are still with us.
Right.
Right down by.
If you're still here now, boy, you're one of the good ones.
Well, now they're hooked. They can't wait to hear the end of this story. There were 2 Circle K's, which serve up delicious fountain Polar Pops, the best kind of fountain soda there is. There's always one right there at the foot of the bridge in Rock Island. I would always get that, stop there, grab my soda on my way up the hill to then head to WQAD. But we have bad, sad news. That gas station is no more. It's no longer a Circle K. Do not have Polar Pops there, so it's really hard for me to get all the way. I don't go out to Black Hawk Road to get the other Polar Pop. So again, this is real inside baseball for people who have no idea what the Quad Cities and Rock Island layout is. But for those who know, for the ones who know, you'll get it.
Well, yeah, once you cross,
There's a Circle K. Last I knew, there's a Circle K in Galesburg, Circle K in Monmouth. If you have a Circle K in your town, let us know. Give us a shout on X. Let us know where the Circle K's are. I do need to know.
And if you are Circle K, you're not a sponsor, but you could be.
But you could be.
We've got great segments that we could segue into that super fast.
Oh, so much. And I'm not just a podcaster, but I'd be a loyal customer of the Circle K if they were the sponsor. So anyway.
Right. Look, this episode was long. I think next week's going to be pretty long too, because I think again there's a game in every conference that is going to be a blockbuster. I think so. Certainly when we review those games, and if we crystal ball next week or the week after, whatever, it's going to be hard to think that after this weekend we're 5 weeks down.
I know,
that's crazy.
Yeah.
We will be. As you're listening to this on Wednesday, we are exactly halfway through the season, and that's
the exact
nuts.
point. Yep,
that's nuts. So, been fun. I think the best is yet to come in this season with the games that we've got left. So, yeah, we're just getting going, I think.
I love it. Well, thank you to all who listened tonight. Thank you for bearing with us, for waiting an extra day. We gave you all the stuff you need here, hopefully, and we'll be back next Friday night. We'll react. The Instant Reacts podcast will be back. You never know who's going to be on the show. We'll just kind of we roll with the flow. We see who can join us. But Mitch, you'll be scouring the internet. You'll be on X, posting all the updates, posting the graphics, the scoreboards. We love it. We appreciate that. So, of course, thank you to everyone who listens, and we will see you next week.
That'll do it for this week's episode of View from the West. Thank you so much for listening. I encourage you to go out to Apple Podcasts or Podbean and subscribe so you can follow along, and downloads will come automatically every week. You can follow along on Twitter at ViewFromWestPod. You can also email me if you're interested in being a sponsor, viewfromwestpod@gmail.com. Thanks so much. We'll see you next week.